4 desirable full-size SUVs. Well, at least for European taste, full-size. But which one is the best? Or let's say, which one is the best for which purpose? In this video we will take a look at the exterior, interior and driving of the Audi Q8, the BMW X5, the Mercedes GLE and the Porsche Cayenne. All of those had their new generation change at roughly the same time. Coincidence? Probably not. They are all especially upgraded in the infotainment system and suspension technologies, but they indeed take some different, interesting approaches. And after you have enjoyed this special episode in full length, tell us in the comments and in the poll which one is your favorite and why. Let's go! The Audi Q8 here in this dragon orange color. This color here brings a lot of light and more to the exterior, interior and the driving experience to this vehicle. Is it just a cut-off Q7 or is it more? LED headlamps are standard. Optional, there's the matrix LED, but then you always get a very interesting LED daytime running light. With the matrix LED light you also get those cascading turning indicators, and if I search for the key, which I have in my pocket, I can show you that as well. When I, for example, open or close the vehicle, you can see here how it's cascading in this LED light. Very interesting right there. You also then get this cascading at the rear lights. The front is very strong with the single frame grille, also with the sporty S-line we have for you today here. And again, this dragon orange color. There's also a very strong galaxy blue, by the way. I would love that. I mean, they are daring colors, but I think it's good that they have also some daring colors as a choice. If you compare it to your Q7, you can see also already this lower line in the front. The sensors are hidden right there, so you can keep a 3D Audi logo. Give me your opinion. Well guys, this time the side profile starts when I'm sitting in the car, because I want to show you here when I'm in a dynamic mode, the car is really lowered all the way, but I can also go in the off-road mode, and then it goes a little bit up with the suspension. And this really also changes how the car looks from the exterior, because when the off-road mode and when the suspension is raised up, then it looks also more SUV-ish. And when you put it in the normal modes, for example, in the dynamic mode, the car sits lower, and then it looks also definitely sportier somehow. What do you think? Well, it's really interesting, I can tell you so far. Yeah, mobile phone is still in the vehicle. 4,99 meters or 16'4" is the total length. That's 7 centimeters less or 3 inches less than the Audi Q7. But of course it's still the same segment, and the siblings are also the Volkswagen Touareg and the Porsche Cayenne. They're all sitting on this very same platform. You can see here the roof rails and the frames are in contrast chrome. Wheels are 21-inch. There are also 22-inch available, and those ones look a little bit smaller here at the moment because they're mounted with winter tires. But I think it's still a good choice. You can also go with 20-inch, for example, because you always need to have a compromise between the comfort and the looks. Here I just hit the door handle from the outside when you put your hand on the inside, and again you open the car again for the keyless entry. And you can see here also those mirrors here flip in and out, frameless window. I can always show you that here. Then you can see this, the S-Line, which has the vehicle color painted wheel arches. You can also get it more in a crossover SUV look if you go for a base version, for example, so you can choose it. I would rather go with the plastic wheel arches because they stress this SUV crossover style. I somewhat prefer that. What do you? And then the Q8 here has a little lower roofline there if you compare it especially to the Q7, but it does not have this very round shape as other SUV coupes, so it just has this strong sporty shoulder right there, but still remains pretty angular. What do you think? Wow, that looks impressive from the rear, right? Especially with this light strip, it's going all over the vehicle. Audi goes for that too. Porsche is going for that big time. Some of the new vehicles just have this middle strip as a reflector line, for example. For example, some of the VW and Seat models now, but Audi and Porsche are allowed to have it as a real LED. And then again, this vertical LED structure at the lamps here really looks very cool. And again, I think it's again an improvement if you compare it to an Audi Q7. The lower part here, this is just visual, this is not an actual exhaust. The real exhaust is really underneath. The S-Line also features some sporty elements right there with this diffuser. And by the way, the ground clearance with the standard suspension is 22 centimeters. And with the air suspension maximum then all the way up in the off-road mode 25 centimeters. But as I've just shown you, you can also go way lower. And if it sits in the dynamic mode, I still think it looks almost like a wagon again when you're in a dynamic mode, because the car is then quite low at the ground. So it's pretty easy with the engines here. This one is a 3-liter TDI with 286 horsepower, or another spec with 231 horsepower. It's called the 50, this one here, or the 45, the smaller one. And then there's a 3-liter TFSI, the petrol engine, with 340 horsepower. This one is called 55, and all are mild hybrid engines. Let's see later on how that one plays out for the consumption. Of course, all with all-wheel drive, but different all-wheel drive systems. I'll talk about that also when we drive the car later. Let's take a look at the interior. Frameless windows, coupe style, pretty cool. And they also nailed it here with the Alcantara at the inside of the doors. The top part, by the way, is not entirely hard, but quite hard. Not really soft, so I would say quite hard at the top part there. Good quality at the window buttons and also where you could control the side mirrors. This bottle opening is quite large, so that does fit, and you open the trunk there too. And I really love that they found this grey styling here for the interior. That looks pretty cool. You can get different colors, of course. Also for the decor elements, like you've seen here with the matte aluminum brush. Then there are also different seats available, different seat forms. So you start with a base seat. Then there is a comfort seat, which is, a little bit different in the form, just a little bit. And then there's a sport seat with more side bolsters and stuff. And this one is the S sport seat. So the sport is seat that is available with the integrated head restraint. If you like that, or if it does fit you, that's really a matter of preference. They are still comfortable for sport seats, I have to say. And the thing is, you can get one animal skin alternative, and that is with the normal sport seats with the separate head restraint. And then you can get on the inside Alcantara and on the outside animal skin. But Audi with the Q8, they are not really sustainable yet as for the seats. In the US, by the way, you could only get the normal seats and the comfort seats, not the sport seats, not the S Sport seats. Not sure why they limit the product portfolio in that case then for US customers. I think that's not a good decision. Here the steering wheel, this is the S-Line interior pack 2, so you get an S steering wheel with a lower bottom for a flat bottom, and also some more sporty elements, for example also this S entry badge. And what I really like, look at that, here where you enter, it's just an even surface basically. That also enables you to remove the floor mat for cleaning quite easily. There's not a step from here then inside the mat. That's really cool. I just like it, and it's also easy to get in and out the vehicle then. Let's now get inside, and again it's pretty easy also because there's no sill you have to step over, and you have this upright SUV seating position, a command view. That's really cool. Still, it works also for tall people. On 1.86 m or 6'1", and still keep a lot of headroom there. So even if you go for a panoramic roof, that would be no problem. Steering wheel can be adjusted here, electric function. in height and also in reach. And of course we also have electric seats here, but well, not of course, because they let you pay for every option for sure. Here with the integrated head restraints, for some it does work, for some not. I can tell you, you know that I don't agree so much with their seating surface they're using at the moment. It will improve in the future. They've recently shown it with a new e-tron GT concept, but I really agree with their ergonomics. They found great seating forms here, no matter which seat you're actually going for. So it's really comfortable also on a long-term run, and so you don't have less comfort here, for example, if you compare it to an Audi Q7. And also if you think about the other siblings, the Volkswagen Touareg or also the Porsche Cayenne and also cross-brand, this is still one of the most comfortable full-size SUVs here to me, although it already has this sportier setup. So an interesting finding here. And by the way, option is here also that we have the soft close. Interior overview, everything is wrapped tightly, horizontal, goes right through with this climate unit, the Quattro logo. I think it's also very well integrated right there. I mean, there is a lot of black piano lacquer for sure. That's maybe too much at some point. Of course, always have to use the microfiber tissues here to clean everything so it doesn't leave so much fingerprints. They go touchscreen all the way, 12.3 digital instrument on the left, virtual cockpit. Soon there will be a virtual cockpit plus, an updated variant. Then in the middle part there's an 8.6 inch screen always at the lower part, and the top one is 10.1 inch. Basically also counts for A6, A7, A8 and so on. There is a base 8.8 also here on the top, but in some markets, but usually the most markets will already start with the big screen right there. You can see Apple CarPlay integration soon also in the details of all of those screens. First finish this interior overview with the steering wheel. You have a perforated structure, good grip with the S steering wheel, also with a good feedback, talking more about that when we drive the car, and also with the single frame Audi grille on top of the steering. I think a very clean interior for sure. And they went all, by the way, here for the cup holders here, they went all the way with the touchscreens, so you cannot control it from somewhere here, or also not on the steering wheel. Well, the digital instruments, that you can do control from the steering wheel, but nothing in this area. And here when it's dark, we can also take a look at the ambient lighting. Here you can turn it brighter and less bright. This is called solar. That would be corresponding to the orange color, but Caribbean is also pretty cool, right? In this turquoise color. Always reminds me of holiday. So Impulse, the red sporty one, Maritime with a more Thomas blue alike. Contour, this is more bright and contrast, and again we can always put it brighter. See, it seems that it's saving also, like the brightness setting for each color. And now again all is all bright. Now we can switch through the colors once more. Always looks pretty cool, especially there in this Quattro sign area. Yeah, here we go. So which one would you go for? I think that would be mine. Unless I'm in holiday mood, I would probably go for that. But in this case, I think as the exterior color is also in that way, this one also works pretty well, pretty nice. Maybe once more here also with this perspective. You can also see how it looks like then, or changes at the inside of the doors. And it's also happening here at the driver's side, so left side of the steering wheel is also illuminated than each. This is the virtual cockpit. You are pretty flexible, clear to read. Then you can have the map, for example, there, and also zoom in and out with your left thumb. Well, too bad we cannot access the CarPlay here. Otherwise, my criticism about not having a controller for the central infotainment system, you could then do everything here maybe, or maybe I could take a call or something, but that's not possible. But you also have, when you have that option, the night vision. And by the way, on the top part, you can see there is this check engine light symbol right there. And no, there's nothing wrong with the engine. That's just when you have turned on the ignition, but not the engine. At the moment, it's just telling you I'm working as a light, and as soon as I turn on the engine completely, you can see it disappears. And there's also a head-up display available, pretty clear to read, with speed, allowed speed, and if you have some route set, you also can see some arrows for the GPS. So here we go. They also offer Android Auto, that's the way you can get back to the system. And the one thing I deactivate first is always here with display, and then I go to this MMI and touch screen feedback, because if you activate that, here, nothing happens when you click something like you would be used for a smartphone. You really have to put it very hard in there, like a real button. I'm not sure why they did that, maybe to get people used to touchscreens who have never used touchscreen before, but I think in a smartphone era, everyone has somehow used a touchscreen. Then it's for me just easier that I can also just easily tip like I'm used with a smartphone, so I always deactivate that function, but good that I can deactivate it actually. This is the main menu. The GPS looks really good. You can activate the satellite view or not. You can go with or without it. This is already the night mode. You can see it is dimmed a little bit because it's dark outside, and it's super responsive. Well, what about the voice control? Set temperature to 23 degrees.
I'll increase the temperature to
Here we go.
23 degrees.
That's cool. I mean, you could still do it like this, but then maybe it's pretty placed lower there, and it's not a real turning knob, so you can only do it like this, or also like this. This is also possible. So you have different functions, but good that it also works via voice recognition. Also, for example, if you want to set a route or something. The lower part then, it stays with the temperature unit or also with the seat heating, unless you, for example, want to enter a new address up there. Then yeah, I know that. That's with the wireless charging. You know, that's really putting it away from the wireless tray now. So, for example, when you're now searching for a location, something like, you can put in a B, like right like this, and then something is being searched there. But again, you can also use the voice command and name a city or something. Overall, the infotainment system is pretty fancy, yes, pretty cool, great visualization. For example, also the drive select, you can see how you can raise and lower the suspension, for example. In dynamic mode, it goes lower. But while you're driving, also when you're driving with the Apple CarPlay and stuff, then you reach over here, can be a little bit distracting. So I like a solution where you can use this, really cool system, stationary and also for the co-driver, and maybe there would be another option to do it while driving. Maybe still the turning knob here, or maybe then something at the steering wheel for the right one that it can safer control it also while driving. And finally, if I hit this button, I can also check out the camera screen here. This is the rear view camera. There are different screens available. This is, by the way, the volume here for oh no so annoying. But of course, you can just control in how much volume you want to have. And by the way, if I just turn on the engine now, you can see those helping lines, they change a little bit. We've seen some better resolutions, but it's overall a good resolution. And if you want, you can also get the 3D view we've shown you with some other cars before. And this is also the automatic parking function if you're in if you want to just let the car do it. And the lower middle console here with some adaptive cup holders. And then this armrest here, it's really interesting because when you slide it forward, it also raises up just a little bit. It's really interesting. And you can also, of course, put it all the way up, but then you have to move it back first, and then just do it like this. Then there's a spot to put the microfiber tissue, and then this is also a spot for inductive charging, and then for the cable loading, you can see there are two USB supplies there. And I always wondered, can the phone charge with the cable or smoothies there and inductive at the same time? Well, here I had cars where it does both actually, and now, well, it says in the car it would also be charging both, but it does not really do it. Instead, I get some error messages at the screen, but the thing is, when I remove the cable here and then put it on, then also the iPhone says it is charging. So what about the rear compartment? Also very easy entry here, nice materials on the inside of the doors, and still you have a lot of legroom. So we had other cars which had a bad package. They were big, still have enough legroom, but then maybe just a little bit here. But this one here, they really have a good package. There's plenty of legroom left That's really cool. Headroom in the rear is also no problem. I mean, the Q7 has a little bit more, yes, but even here they did not make a bad compromise, you know. So some of those SUV variants of the SUVs, they are really like cut off at the back pretty much, and then you really lose some headroom. But here it's still absolutely okay, and it's super comfortable also here to sit in the rear. Also, you're still flexible. You can move this bench forward here to increase the space behind you. Of course, then, you know, you should be a little bit small to sit here. Also, you are able to change the angle of the rear bench. You know, this would be sitting more upright or a little bit more behind. Then, of course, you can adjust it also for the luggage, for example. So it's pretty cool. Isofix at the outside of the seats each. Then you have a middle armrest with some cup holders. You can also, just from here already, just flip the middle part as a ski hatch. Using the same lever here, you can also fold the same bench from here. So pretty flexible, pretty cool, very good result here for the rear. There's of course a middle tunnel, and then you have, if you want so, an additional AC unit here for the rear, as well as two more power supplies here, 12 volt, with those nice metal knurled and illuminated ones. So always when you open the trunk, you can also see this interesting LED light signature. 600 liters is the standard setup, and the length here is actually over 1 meter, 1 meter 07 in length, and then it's about 1 meter here, a little bit wider than 1 meter in width here, even wider here in this upper area. That's then, you know, almost 120 then, and the height here at the back part there is 53 centimeters, and just at the lower part here in the front, that is then rather 38 centimeters. So this is the only limit then. If you compare to the Q7, the Q7 continues on right there. But besides that, you are actually not limited that much. It still offers you, you know, good capacity here. Putting in luggage, there you can see. And the only thing I'm also missing is there are no buttons here to flip the seats from here. You can lower the vehicle here if you have the air suspension to have an easier access then, but then you have to go around for the maximum capacity and flip the seats like this. Well, it's quite easy to do, and then you put them straight to the lower part, and then they're basically fixed, so they cannot flip up again somehow like this, and then we have the maximum loading capacity. This is 1,750 liters. And if we then check the length once more, so to my driver's seat, it's almost 2 meters, and this is here 2 meters. And if we put it all the way to the front to the shifting stick, to the lever, it would then be 2 meters 55. Hey, it's Thomas's driving lounge with the Audi Q8, and we're driving the 3-liter TDI. So very sonorous sound, very calm. You don't hear directly that it's a diesel. Really confident already from the engine. You know, AJ and Michelle have also tested the 3-liter TFSI, and we've had that also in the other big Audis. Of course, there's always a difference in consumption. This one here, I can already tell you, as for the consumption, it tends toward 9 liters on 100 kilometers. You can also score something below that if you use less seat heating or whatever, or less AC. That would be some 26 mpg as a realistic figure. And if you now ask yourself, wait a minute, didn't you drive the same engine in one of the big sedans? Yes, indeed. And there we had rather, you know, some 1.5, 2 liters less, so something more towards 34 mpg. So indeed, this SUV building form does give you more consumption. It's not a completely different result, but it is notable, definitely, because it has just more wind resistance. That's something that comes quite natural. On the other hand, I have this good overview, I have a higher seating position, and indeed this car remains a good overview, although it is this somewhat SUV coupe form. So I think that's also something which is, would be really important to me, that they can still keep a very good overview. And see also when I do some lane changing, it remains always quite agile. That's pretty cool. Being stuck in city traffic here just a little bit, as usual we deliver you city driving, countryside, motorway, everything you might experience in your everyday driving life. Here it's good, we can already test the adaptive cruise control. Set it here to a separate column behind the steering wheel. And now let's see, we are running, I'm doing nothing, just, I'm almost ready to brake, but now the car is reducing the speed to the car in front of me. Still braking, not myself. And now I should start the acceleration once again. Yeah, here we go. So it's working pretty nicely, this system. There's also the blind spot monitor here in those side mirrors. So when you're driving slowly, it is constantly flashing, or when there's someone then just in your blind spot, like now, you see this yellow light right there. And if I would set the turning indicator, you can see it is also flashing then. So this is another warning, basically. So let me also increase the speed here just a little bit. There we go. Starting also because we feel some bumps here now, uneven roads in the city. Talking about suspension, you have the adaptive suspension as standard for this car. It always depends on market, of course. And then optional with air suspension. Probably most of the Q8 will be bought with air suspension. But it has a rather sporty setup. So it does not have this air suspension carpet soft ride like you do have in the Mercedes GLE. And one by one, it seems that the Mercedes GLE is one of the few cars left there on the market which still has this very soft air suspension ride. And in general, I do expect that of an air suspension. Otherwise, I would go for an adaptive sport suspension or whatever. Here, it's still a good compromise. It's a little bit like in the BMW X5, where it also goes in a rather stiff direction for the air suspension. But it's still that you feel very good in here. But if someone tells you this is a very good adaptive suspension, it's not an air suspension, but you say, yeah, okay, I believe you. So again, it depends again on what you like. And one other reason is that they wanted to differentiate this vehicle here a little bit to the Audi Q7. So they have a little stiffer setup than the Q7, make it sportier. And indeed, it drives quite sporty. I will show that also when we drive a little bit faster. And what you probably also hear, that it's super silent in here. There is the front insulation, of course, and also the side insulation. There's an additional insulation package there, and it's still silent, although we have those coupe style windows, no frames around it. Really pretty cool. So it's a cozy atmosphere. You feel somewhat sporty at the same time. And as I was driving this car for the very first time, I felt, wait a minute, this is a big car. But it really doesn't feel that way. It more feels like a put-up sedan. So it's not, for example, the Volkswagen Touareg, which is also a sibling to the Q7 and the Q8, does feel different. This one here definitely feels a little bit sportier, and also due to the rear axle steering, which we have inbuilt here, maximum of 5 degrees steering across to the front axle. This also reduces the turning circle and also accounts for this feeling that this car feels smaller than it actually is. And we not often say that about full-size SUVs. Full-size, of course, for European taste, when we have some 5 meters of length. Sometimes, in the US, this rather counts as a mid-size then. So, always power reserves, lane change is easily done, and such a good steering feedback. There is no dead area of the steering. So every precise command is transported to the road. I really love that. And from all those recent full-size SUVs we've been testing, the BMW X5, the Volkswagen Touareg, their Mercedes GLE, and was there anymore else? Porsche Cayenne, of course, is also one of the siblings. And in general, you know, cross-brand. Every brand has something which they do best. And here the Audi cars and also some of their Volkswagen Corporation siblings, they have very good steering feedback. And this one here, it's definitely among the best. So it is somewhat, well, that was a failure of the range sensor. Yeah, maybe just due to some drops, but now it's less clean than before. Great. I hope you can see that on camera. So back to the steering feedback. It is somehow light to steer, that you can easily, you know, maneuver it, but at the same time it feels sporty and gives you enough feedback, and that's something that is really hard to achieve, but they indeed have achieved that. So it's really just so much fun to steer this car around. And you know, big SUVs, they usually feel very comfortable and you can enjoy a long-term ride or something, and traveling, a lot of room. But then sportiness, it's not so often. The Porsche Cayenne also offers that, yeah. But there also the seating position is way sportier. So I feel that this one here is a very good compromise. So they have tuned a lot of things to sportiness, like the steering and also suspension, also the seating position here with the S sports seats, with the integrated head restraints. But then again, you don't lose that comfort that sometimes I feel is maybe a little bit less in the Porsche Cayenne. So among those siblings, I think this one here is probably one of the best drive as for the overall driving fun, for example. I would take the Mercedes GLE if the soft air suspension and the comfort would be the most important to me. Although those seats here are also really comfortable, and also the other seats you can pick, I talked about it earlier. Audi has made some very comfortable seats recently. They really improved their work there, so that was pretty cool. This one here would definitely also be among my choices. So, you know, I told you earlier, as I was first hearing about, oh, they now also do this SUV coupe style, I think, you know, whatever, cut off Q7 or so. But it's really awesome to drive. Really positively surprised about that. Here also with 100 kilometers or 60 miles on the motorway, and it's a little bit rainy outside still, so not so good road conditions and stuff. And you see sometimes blurry vision a little bit, but it's still remaining super silent in here, and it's giving me really a great ride once more. We can always go into a, let's say, better shifting mode. Well, that is blinding now, pretty much. So when we go to the S mode, just drop the speed just a little bit, I can show you some acceleration. So if we, why is everyone going so slow here? Interesting. So now I'm going 70 kilometers an hour, and I'll accelerate to 100 again, and let's go. That was already it. So you can see even at higher speeds you always have enough power reserve, really good. And when you're in the S mode, the gears are turned up higher, so you get a little bit more RPM. 6.3 seconds was the acceleration figure to 100 kilometers or 62 miles an hour. That's of course pretty amazing, considering the size of the vehicle. So this diesel gives you a lot of power and confidence, that's for sure. And again, sound-wise, it's not so bad to have this diesel than here too. The petrol engine then will be even higher in consumption. That's of course one thing that would be probably one of the reasons. There is also this drive select. You cannot control that well while driving, yes. So if you go from comfort, for example, to dynamic, then the air suspension goes down just a little bit. Also, we are then in this S shifting mode. Once again, I just initiated singularly. Here, see, you don't have to turn the steering wheel that much. Good feedback now from the car in the corner to the right again. A lot of fun, although the car is pretty big. And now it's more like so really stiffer feedback from the suspension, if you like so. You might remember it's about 9 centimeters from top spec to the lowest suspension spec, which would be the difference. I mean, it would be a little bit too stiff to ride here, maybe. You see, I'm catching up to people so early than now, even in corners. Although I'm not driving the obviously, sportiest car or something. Raising up, of course, in off-road mode, that would be rather when you're driving slow and really need some more ground clearance. Look at that feedback also when doing some slaloms. Hardly any SUVs where I like to do slalom with. The brakes, also quite satisfying. I mean, this wet surface here now, I think they don't have a too harsh setup, but also not too soft. So really also a very new, it's funny. Now I'm standing still and then the air suspension is adjusting. I wonder how strange that looks when you're sitting on the outside of the vehicle or maybe like behind the traffic light and see, what is this car doing there? But of course this lowrider scene we recently shown you in the Mercedes GLE, where there was this special program mode which is not available from stock, where this car was really dancing. That was of course something else, also very impressive. Now again, when standing still and those cars are passing by, even though it's raining, again super silent in here. You can also activate the camera, but then one of the drawbacks is of course when it has been raining there are some drops on the camera. It always depends, of course. Some cameras are hidden in the logo, especially the VWs have that. That's always a good idea because then they're also protected by rain and everything. So that's not the case here. So it's quite blurry to see something from the rear. As soon as I put the sports mode in, the car is also awakening again from this stop-start mechanism. We can start driving once more. There's also the efficiency mode, by the way. So there the throttle input is being reduced. That helps me to keep up a good... I mean, come on. Who programmed this traffic light? Do you know such situations where you're driving the allowed speed and not racing, and then exactly when you're driving the allowed speed, the traffic light turns to red? I mean, come on. Seriously? Yeah, whatever. Gives me some time to talk about the all-wheel drive setup, because when they accelerate now, again soon, like already now, so I'm feeling pulled from the front and pushed from the rear at the same time, because it has a permanent all-wheel drive setup. This one here in the 3-liter TDI with the big horsepower spec is still the classic quattro drive, I'm not sure, I've talked about that a couple of times already. Quattro is not one all-wheel drive. It's just their brand name for the all-wheel drives at Audi, and meanwhile they're thinking like 6 different kinds of. So it always depends on, if that's the classic permanent all-wheel drive where we have like here, a basic setup 40% in the front, 60% in the rear, and then it adapts a little bit. Or if it's this, for example, Quattro Ultra, the newest iteration, where you rather have again this front plus rear wheel drive. It's like the Helix system at VW or Seat, or also the smaller Audi models. But the Quattro Ultra, you have that, for example, in the smaller horsepower spec of this diesel. Yes, it's front plus rear wheel drive. It's more adaptive. The difference to the standard Helix clutch is that there, at the rear axle, there's also another clutch which then can decouple the driving elements so they don't roll and don't use more fuel. So that's another efficiency trim. So you can say that the newer Quattro Ultra Drive is more efficient, yes, but this one here rather delivers you, let's say, a standard all-wheel drive experience. So depending on what you really wish. And also those petrol engines go for this new Quattro Ultra Drive. You know, talked about it with the Audi A6, A7, A8 and so on as well. What do you think? Which all-wheel drive would you actually go for? So indeed, so many things you can do with this car in all of the disciplines, and everything is basically flawless. Yes, I mean, for a diesel the consumption should be a little bit lower, but considering the size of this vehicle and the SUV segment, it's also not that some of the competitors would be consuming less or something. So that's nothing unusual, but I would always just wish that. Not sure if you can already see some of the ambient light. It gets a little bit darker now weather-wise. I also left it here on the yellow ambient light. That's also something pretty nice. So really seldom that I had an SUV that was so good in comfort and so good in the agile driving part at the same time. And it's not only that it's a cut-off Q7, it's also let's say, extensive Q7 facelift at the same time, and also with this rather sportier tune. So I can indeed understand if people at the moment say I'd rather go for the Q8 than for the Q7, unless you need that extra space in the very rear and that somewhat extra in legroom. But as we've shown you, you still do have some significant legroom. Here again, no matter if it's low speeds or high speeds, excellent steering feedback. This is one of the best things, you know, I really like about this vehicle. And the steering feedback and the precise steering is, to me, very important because, you know, I'm sitting in this interior all the time. And I mean, if there's something on the exterior which I don't like, and yeah, you know, you don't see it when you're driving inside. But the steering, it's the thing, unless we are reaching the autonomous driving level, you're using it all the time. And if there's something you're not satisfied with the steering, that's not good. So I would always recommend you to go to test that before you actually buy a vehicle, or just watch Autogefühl and trust our verdict about that steering. Because it can be quite annoying. I mean, there may be also people out there say like, you know, who cares? Main thing is the car drives, and if it steers a little bit less or more, whatever. It always depends, of course, you know, on how many cars you've been driving and how important so you know those details are to you. But that's what we do here at your number one resource for in-depth car reviews. We really pay attention to the details and try to give you the best feeling possible you might have for this vehicle. Feeling, by the way, also you can always hug this Alcantara A-pillar. Again, by the way, about the overview, even to the rear and to the sides, again, I have no problem. So you feel safe and you feel smaller with this vehicle, although when you look at it from the outside, also in this bright color, it doesn't look small at all. I think that's also something they've achieved very well. So it leaves me then with something to criticize. Yeah, you know, we don't do any nitpicking, let's say like, oh, we have to find at least one thing so so everyone believes us or something. No, we criticize when something there is to criticize, and we praise something when there's something to praise. And here, yeah, I mean, if you like a softer air suspension setup, that would be maybe something, but that's not really criticism, that's more like what you prefer. Consumption should be a little bit lower, of course. That's always, they can always something, you know, they can always work on. So this mild hybrid system that is also in this diesel, you know, doesn't seem to be working that well, actually. But then it's actually, especially in this segment here, pretty flawless vehicle. Yes, it's more than a cut-off Q7. It's basically an extensive facelift at the same time. Has a sportier exterior. On camera, it somehow looks a little bit smaller and lower than it actually is, and it also feels smaller when driving, especially due to the rear axle steering, but also as they found a great sporty setup here without losing comfort. So it's a little bit sportier than the Audi Q7, but overall in the whole segment here of the big SUVs, and if you think about the inner corporation siblings, it's one of the best to drive. There are maybe some softer suspension setups, yes, but it has a great compromise, you know, with sportiness and comfort at the same time. It's just so great to drive and feels more agile even than it looks. Exterior also quite fresh, and they don't have this typical round style as other SUV coupes. I really like that. I more prefer this angular style. I don't like those round SUVs coupes that much, but this is personal taste. What do you think? And I think it really gained visual-wise if you compare it to the Q7. Interior, great processing quality. They have good stuff there, and just with the seats, you know, the materials are not sustainable there yet. They don't have too much animal skin alternatives. They will improve in the future. With controlling the screen, it's easy to use and intuitive. But again, while driving, you lack some commands you might be able to do with a central control knob or something. But then also the voice activation comes stronger more and more, that you can do some functions with that. You still have a lot of room, especially in the rear bench. And the trunk area is also not such a bad compromise. I mean, if you transport something which is very high also in the rear end part, that's a problem then if you compare it also to the Q7 or to other vehicles which are not that cut off at the rear. But in general, you still are really versatile with this vehicle. So it's both, you get the visuals and you get the room on the interior. What do you think about the all-new Audi Q8? Oh wait, I still found something to criticize. $67,000 plus the price, entry price in the US, or 76,000 euros in Germany. But that's not all. If you put everything in there, here, this very vehicle with all the extras it has, 115,000 euros. That's really super expensive. Then you have to question yourself, yeah, is that really justified? And it's, you know, 10 to 15,000 euros more or US dollars more expensive than the Q7. But that you cannot directly compare because this one here starts with some more equipment extra and also with the bigger engines. The Q7 also available with smaller engines. So if you spec them equally, there will be still a couple of thousand euros difference, but not that much. But still overall, yeah, it's just if you have a lot of money, of course, or if you can afford high leasing rates, or if you at least get a very good deal from Audi. Let's hope for that. And goodbye. Generation 1, 1999 until 2006. Generation 2, 2006 until 2013. Generation 3, 2013 until 2018. And here it is, the fourth generation of the BMW X5. We will take you on a detailed tour of the exterior, the interior, and the driving experience on-road and off-road. Here with the most common engine you will probably also buy. And of course talking about the changes to the predecessor generation. You have already seen the changes throughout the generations. This one here has the biggest double kidney ever. Also with those adaptive fins, the inner ones will open when the engine needs more air. And those headlamps are more horizontally drawn. They start with LED from standard equipment, optional adaptive LED for the cornering. Then those ones here are the laser lights. They have the high beam function for about 600 meters range, but in US it will be half of the range due to regulations. We'll also tell you more about different things which are different in the different markets of the countries. So depending on your regulations, there are a few surprises. 4.92 meters or 16'1" is the total length of the new generation X5, and it is actually 6 centimeters wider. And here in the length, it's 4 centimeters, so just a little bit longer. So not so many changes. The rims start with 18-inch. Those ones are 21-inch. 22 is the maximum. Then there's a base trim level and the X-Line. This one here is the X-Line. They have those plastic wheel fenders, still the off-road look. We've been off-roading here today already, therefore it's not super clean. I will soon also show you the M Sport. That one then has painted wheel arches and also lower bumper is painted. You will soon be able to compare that. Then more subtle lines. Here's a dropping line dividing in light and shadow. Overall a rather conservative design in the side profile, but they also want to keep the room on the inside, of course. And we recently been there also in Spartanburg. All the BMW X models are built in the US in Spartanburg. Just the X1 is built in Europe. Now looking at the rear, rather an evolutionary step, but those taillights are new, 3-dimensional frame and also horizontally drawn as well. It appears wider, and as I said earlier, it's also 6 centimeters wider overall in the chassis. Then the lower part has this contrast lower bumper and those fake exhaust tips around it. The 40i exhaust. 40i will be the most common engine. And since we're at the rear, let's talk about the rear axle steering. An optional feature where the rear axle goes, the tire is 3 degrees across at slow speeds, reducing the turning circle by 1 meter, or when you go at higher speeds, it goes in a parallel direction, the same one as the front wheels, giving you a little bit more smooth stability at higher speeds. And let me talk about the suspension choices. You start with a base suspension, base steel suspension. Then you can go for the air suspension, which we have today. You can put it up and down a little bit depending on the speed. 8 centimeters is the difference then from the top to the bottom part. And then there's an adaptive M suspension. So there's not an air suspension, but an adaptive one that goes, in a wider span between sportiness and comfort. But in general, this is definitely the sporty choice. So if you want the most comfort, you go here for the air suspension. If you want the sportiest ride, you go for the adaptive M suspension, because that one then is also now available in a package with the anti-tilting function. So that when the car goes in the corner, the G-force are basically evened out because suspension is working against it and therefore, staying more even as it is. BMW says they did not offer the anti-tilting function as other manufacturers do, together with the air suspension, because they think that people either want to go the sporty ride or the very comfortable ride with the air suspension, and then also won't care so much about the tilting effect. Definitely a different strategy than the other manufacturers. And this is how the new X5 looks in white with black rims and off-road tires. Those black rims, by the way, also 20-inch. And to show you an individual color, this one here is beige, but the reason I'm showing you this vehicle is not only because of the color. This one here is the M Sport. So this trim line here, you can see, has those painted wheel arches in contrast to the plastic wheel arches we've seen with the X-Line, or which we have also in the base trim level. And if I would buy an SUV, I would always like to have this SUV look, because in that way, I'm not really sure, not my favorite. But what about you? Would you pick rather this one here or the classic SUV crossover wheel arches? And we can also see the 22-inch rims. Those ones are, it's the maximum size that is available. Engines, no 4-cylinder whatsoever. So for the diesel side, you have a 3-liter 6-cylinder, either with 265 or 400 horsepower. The latter one then in the M50D. Or today, this engine will be the worldwide bestseller. This is the 3-liter 6-cylinder turbo petrol engine. In this case here with 340 horsepower. And then there's also, not in Europe, not in Germany, but in the US, for example, there will be the 4.4-liter V8, the strongest one. This one then with 462 horsepower. And the acceleration figures for this one here, 5.5 seconds to 100 kilometers or 62 miles an hour. And then there will be this one, the 45e. This one will be the plug-in hybrid coming up soon. Not yet available for driving, but we'll keep you updated on that. You can charge here on this side with a plug then later on. And this one here will be based on a 3-liter 6-cylinder petrol engine, here then with a total system output of 394 horsepower and 5.7 seconds to 100 kilometers or 62 miles an hour. And BMW promises, the final figures we will reveal later, it has supposed to be like something about 80 kilometers of full electric range. Will this really be true? We will find out for you as soon as possible. This is the car key, silver elements, here to open the hatch, close it and open it, or with the keyless entry. Strangely, it's not that you close it while holding your hand here. You have to put your finger here to close it in this area, and then to open it as usual right there. And we also have a soft close right there. You can show it right there. Ah, magic. But again, you know, it's an extra. The question is if you really need it. Then on the inside of the doors we have sensor tech, that's leatherette. Also with some, you know, this is the Hofmeisterknick, the design. Been famous with the BMW 3 Series. Also you can transport over to the interior of the car. Then also matte wood is available, but also some aluminum structure, just as you like it for the inside of the door. You can also fit bigger bottles right there, that's good. Then the new interior right there. Soon we'll tell you everything about the screens, but you can already see that those are digital. There are two different steering wheels available, a normal comfortable one and the sports steering wheel. This one is the normal comfort steering wheel. Then there are also two different seat forms. There's a comfort seat and there's also a sports seat. So two seat forms, and they both start with a sensor tech surface in black or beige worldwide, also in Europe. And this one here then is the optional animal skin surface for extra money. But the sensor tech is very popular in the US, especially, for example. You can also move up those head restraints electronically. Again, you know, if you want to adjust the seat even more, those are all costly extras. That's the downside with a lot of those premium vehicles. Also here, for example, to put the front part of the seat back again. In some cars it's manual. Here everything is electrical. But again, you know, when you think about the starting price, you won't end up with the normal starting price for sure. Getting inside is super easy, as we're used to from those SUVs, and you have an upright seating position. It is of course somewhat similar as in the predecessor generation, maybe a little bit more roomish. So you have the panoramic roof right there inbuilt, the standard in the US. Still have some headroom left, as I have the seat in the lowest position. The moment is 86 or 6'1". So in some markets you'll also be able to go without the panoramic roof, and then you also have a little bit more headroom. The steering wheel can be electronically adjusted in reach and height. That's good, and overall those are really comfortable seats, a really good seating position, and you feel like king of the road. This is what the full-size SUV does. So this is the interior overview. You can see the biggest changes for sure, that you have those two 12.3-inch screens, left and right, both the same size, although they look quite different. It is very well integrated now. It stands out, of course, a little bit that you can better see it. Then very flat surfaces all around here that don't stick out too much. Again, here matte wood is being used. So you can hear how, let's say, natural and rough it feels, but really cool, definitely. Then you can see this a small black screen. When I soon turn on the engine, then you will also see the climate unit right there, because that's all built right in there. So that don't only trust on the touch screens, there are still some manual buttons left, also for the volume, for example. Here we go with the AC, so I even don't have to turn on the engine for that. So we can change the vent strength, for example, right here, then the temperature on the left side. So the screen, it can be controlled with touch. Let's go back to the home screen first. There we go. For example, the GPS looks quite cool, but you can still use this lower turning knob as you are used to. This lower area has also been redesigned. It is also available with a classic gear shifter. This one here is the crystal package with this glass work shifting lever, but you could also get another one. And a lot of hotkey buttons in the lower part. This can be a little bit confusing. Lower part for the driving modes. Good that you have a separate button for the camera, however. That comes quite handy, that you can always access the camera when you press it. Although obviously not when the engine is not running. It would have been cool if they would have introduced that. Then of course some hotkeys still for accessing the map or then the home screen again, as I just did earlier. And the steering wheel, here again the comfort steering wheel. There's also sport available with heated function for winter times. right side to browse, for example, the radio, also for the head-up display, left side for the ACC, and also shifting pedals for this automatic transmission. And when I press this voice activation button at the steering wheel, I can, for example, say set temperature to 75 degrees.
I'm setting the temperature at the driver's side at 75 degrees Fahrenheit.
So that worked. Also an easy way to do it while driving, for example. By the way, if the key is not found by the car, put it right here. There's also a symbol that's right next to the steering column. Then the car does detect the key, because at some point we had the problem that the car wasn't detecting the key in the middle console and didn't start. But when you put it here once, just hold it once, then you can always start the car. Those are the digital instruments. You can see on the left side we have the speedometer, on the right side the RPM going counterclockwise. I'm not so sure what I think about that seeing in the BMW. The reason for that they did that is that it's room saving. You know, they save space to do it that way. So in the middle part, you will then, for example, be able to see the GPS or something. And here on the right side, you also can switch around what you want to see. And we also have a head-up display. At the moment, it looks quite small, but when you have a map assigned, for example, a route guidance, they will be way bigger, and you can also see the GPS map, a part of it, in the head-up display. So one more close-up at the infotainment unit. By the way, it's fully flicker-free on real life for the eyes. Again, with a good processor, it goes quite fast to zoom in and out. That's no problem. Again, you can also use the touchscreen, but then again, you have the possibility to use the touchscreen or the lower button. You connect your phone via Bluetooth, that's possible, or wireless CarPlay is available, but just CarPlay, not Android Auto. BMW says that they are not satisfied with the way that Google or Android treats data, so they only collaborate with Apple. That's what they're saying. And here in the settings, by the way, this is very interesting, I think, for the driver assistance system. I deactivate the steering intervention. Why? I will tell you in the driving part. So a lot to control here, and also with a interesting visualization right there. Here also in blue, as the car really is. So now I have activated the engine, and there you can see the camera view. It's a very wide view. This is, by the way, the front camera at the moment. And when I put it to the rear, you can see here this in the rear view camera, together with the drone view from above. That's quite interesting. And I can also pick the different sides here, for example, to check out what's going on right there, that I don't damage those rims. Again, this big surface of the matte wood, and you can open it. However, this opening and closing mechanism is... I'm not a fan of it. It's somehow strange, like when you put it back. I'm not so sure about that. But then below that, we have several options. You have now a new option of cooled and heated cup holders, like we know from a Mercedes GLE or GLS. Here is a normal USB port. All over the place will have the USB-C ports. And then you can also have a smartphone, inductive smartphone charger right there in the front. Oh, Schmoozy is loading up. And this works, of course, with all smartphones that can support the inductive charging. With the opening of the car with NFC, by the way, they do not offer that for the iPhone, not for Apple products, just for Samsung Galaxy 7 or above that. If you want to do that with the iPhone, you have to have those, like a holder where you put a key card in. Then you can also use it. The advantage is then you can put out the key card and use it for valet parking or something, that you don't have to hand your smartphone over. I'm more classic key fob guy to open and close the car. Or what do you think about opening or closing a car with the smartphone? This is the middle armrest. You can have, for example, also smartphone storage in there, then with a USB-C charger. Just wireless CarPlay is available, by the way. If you want to plug in your phone with the cable to CarPlay, won't work, just wireless over Bluetooth protocol. And also interesting, now with the smartphone, you can now have over-the-air updates for the software of the car, but you have to use your smartphone. So make a hotspot then for the connection between the car and the smartphone, then the smartphone gets the updates. And we have this panoramic roof with a black shade and it really goes all over the vehicle, so especially the rear passengers will enjoy this view. You can also open it. It's not only a panoramic roof. Here we go. The front part does open, and you can leave some fresh air in. And let's get in the rear. Well, you see the door doesn't open too wide, so that can be a little bit problematic if you want to install child seats. Then, I mean, this is the seat as I would be driving. Yes, those are very comfortable, also very thick seats, so this is hardly any legroom left. That's very negatively surprising. Also considering the car has gone a little bit longer and should also have increased legroom. I mean, I do fit here as a tall adult, so you can drive with 4 tall adults, no problem. But still, there should be more knee room considering the length of the vehicle. Or what do you think? Headroom-wise, although we have the panoramic roof, still some clearance there. But again, also, for the size of the car, I have experienced a lot of other cars which have more headroom. Here, by the way, this is some special hanger, so you can put here, for example, your jacket over there and just store it a little bit more space consuming. But you can also easily remove it if I mean, this can't be so good for crash safety. So if someone sits here in the rear, definitely always remove it. This is more when you're like on your business trips or something and really need your stuff, that you don't want to flat iron them all over the place. And another USB-C port we have here too. And just those simple shades for the rear. Always good to have them, especially when you have kids in the back and maybe want to sleep or something. Isofix at the outside parts of the seats. And then we have some cup holders right there, together with some more storage area. Yeah, here we go. And on the other side, we have another hanger possibility. You can also remove that, so you can put a bag here or something. And finally, we also have a separate climate unit for the rear passengers. So now it gets really interesting. I can open this trunk in 4 different ways. From the inside of the door, from the driver's cabin, I could press the button here at the key fob. I could open it right here, and I could use this foot kicking mechanism. And in 3 ways, it opens like this, in this split way. This lower part here, I can also, just take a seat and have a picnic or something. This is a special mechanism. We know it also from the Range Rover. I mean, it's quite cool to have, and you can load in things and out quite easily. This one here is the manual cover for the trunk. This one here is the 645-liter setup. And if I flip the seats, so in this way you have the maximum setup of 1,860 liters, and that looks quite good. However, what about this cover? Yes, that's the base manual one, but you can also get a new feature where this one then is electrically folded down into the floor bottom. Brian has that one in his static review of the X5. You can check that out as well. We will link it in the video description. And this one here is the normal boot floor. So just fabric, but there's also a special version with rubber pads available, and when you drive they come up a little bit, and so they secure your luggage. Also, you can see that with Brian's static review. Then you can put up this lower floor part, and there are hydraulic struts. You can store some stuff underneath, or then also optionally get a replacement tire. So I can also put this one up here electronically again, and when I push this button here, as soon as I open it again, then the car moves down with the air suspension for easier loading. And let's check this. Child safety. Yeah, that's decent. That's totally okay. Wasn't the case recently with the Audi e-tron, for example. So, and now, the last thing I want to show you, as you might remember, 3 ways: foot kick opening mechanism, key fob, inside of the door. They always open everything. But when I use this one here, manual basically, manual electric, so to say, then you see only the top part opens. Maybe if you just want to grab something and put it in very quickly without really moving heavier things in and out. Welcome to Thomas's Driving Lounge with the BMW X5. We'll start in small town America, and later on we'll head on to a little higher speed, and also we'll soon have an off-road driving part for you as well. So we'll cover all the different situations which you might come across as a customer or just as a fan for watching and enjoying, of course. So the new BMW X5, if you compare it to the previous generation, it still feels like an X5. So if you're an existing X5 customer, which is actually the biggest buyer group always, then you still feel at home, and it's not a completely different vehicle. The first thing you notice...
In a quarter of a mile, turn left at the end of the road onto Atlanta.
Let's see if we can turn down that voice guidance. There it is. It's always good to test, live test. And, oh, we forgot that. And directly you can just press it right there. By the way, it's flickering just on camera here again, especially the small action cam doesn't really like those screens. So we'll turn it dark. And I think that looks better. Yeah. So it's also another contrasting view which is possible, that you have it, with a dark background and then with a wide road. So it's, quite interesting to see that you have those alternatives. This one will be good when driving at night, for example, then you're not blinded so much. And well, I've driven some highway stuff earlier, and just cruise control on long-term run, because I want to see what decent mileage could I possibly get with this 3-liter turbo petrol engine when you're driving really steady and rolling or being in traffic a little bit, not really forcing the issue. And that is about 29 mpg, so that would be 28, 29 mpg, something like that. That would be 9 liters on 100 kilometers. Overall, considering the size of the vehicle, this is quite decent, because some mid-size sedans or compact sedans with petrol engines consume that kind of fuel. Of course, if you hammer the throttle a little bit more or have some off-road situations, the consumption will go up. So here at the moment, the road is not that good, but we have the air suspension that is evening out the bumps very well. Overall, the sound insulation has been improved a lot. This one is, to me, one of the biggest differences to the predecessor so far. It's a super silent ride, and I can recommend the air suspension. I feel that it's not really that soft. So if you compare it to other air suspension, they still remain with a sporty setup. Actually, when I want an air suspension, I would like it a little bit softer, but that's of course a matter of preference. If you want the sportiest ride in this car, you have to go for the adaptive M suspension. Then you'll have the stiffest ride if you pick the sports mode. You can also go then with normal or the comfort mode, and then it also will be softer because, as I said, it is an adaptive suspension. And of course, I always tend to say it's never bad to buy the base version of the vehicle, because also the base BMW suspensions are really very good. So the driving feel and suspensions, that's what BMW does best. They've done things they don't do that well maybe than others, but driving wise, driving fun and suspensions, that's where they're really king of the game. And so you'll also be just fine with the base version. The German entry price, by the way, in US price will be similar, just above 60,000 euros or dollars then. And if you pick, for example, a bigger engine or some extras, you can easily climb up over 100k. That's really expensive, but it's not really different if we think about an Audi Q7 or a Mercedes GLE or the Lexus RX. They're all very, very expensive. It's always the question if it pays off. That's also a reason I tend to say, you don't have to have everything, extra. We are of course showing you a lot of extras they have. Overall, they made some more stuff, standard equipment, but then also went up in the price a little bit. For example, we can also use the seat massage while driving, so that works pretty well with this comfort seat. as I said earlier, those ones are the comfort seats. We could not show you the sport seats yet. I hope at a later stage we'll be able to show you a sport seat and maybe also one with sensor tech, with the more sustainable material, that you also have some variety in what we could actually show you. And of course later on in driving experience we will at a later stage hopefully show you the plug-in hybrid. Today the normal petrol engine, this one here, the 40i, will be the engine to go for globally. So most people will drive with this engine, and it is really a superb one because it's very silent when you just let it roll. It feels really sophisticated and evolved. So you always have enough torque left, no matter in which situation you are, even if you leave it in a normal driving mode. And at the same time, you really have an explosive acceleration if you want it. For example, you could go down, shift some gears down with the shifting pedals, and then it becomes a little bit faster. But in the normal driving modes, it will rather be a comfortable and relaxing ride. So there's also the Eco Pro mode, for example, and if you are in the Eco Pro mode, there we are, then the instrument cluster also changes. So I have a big consumption meter then, so I can more take a look at that and try to tune it a little bit. The throttle input is decreased, so that's all fuel optimized. And the different thing is then the sport mode, everything turns red and sporty. And then I have more punch in the throttle, so when I just push it a little bit, it gets more drive. Also the sound experience changes a little bit. Steering wise, yeah, it's a little bit stiffer than in the steering. So if I'm in the comfort mode, it's a little bit easier to steer actually, and that's good for parking in and out and stuff. But overall, that's what they always usually have. They still remain with a very natural driving feel, so a natural way of steering. The only thing I'm not quite keen of is the lane keeping system, the active lane keeping system. So I have actually deactivated it because there were situations where when I had it activated and you maybe I get a little bit to the right or a little bit to the left, just like this, and it would be no problem. I could, drive further in a smooth way. But then suddenly it's like, wow, it drives you back to the middle in such a harsh way that I was really shocked, and I was thinking like, oh wow, that's pretty weird. So I think the active lane keeping system is overreacting in this vehicle. And we had similar stuff with Mercedes as well, with the new systems. This one here overreacts in the steering. Those Mercedes systems, they tend to keep you in the lane then with, with braking at the individual wheels, and that is also pretty weird. The good thing now with my Mercedes is, at the left side of the steering wheel you can always deactivate it, press the button. Here you really have to go in the menu, and I don't want to do that while driving really. So that's why I showed you that earlier in the GPS menu, how to do that. So, and I left it deactivated now. So other than that, what is really cool is when you have the active cruise control or adaptive cruise control. That one works pretty well. So you activate it here at the middle button, then you set it to the speed limit here, for example, now 30 mph. Do not pass. I just need the wizard stick now. So you set it, and then you don't have to care about the speed. And distance to the car in front of you is also being kept. It's quite comfortable. And the funny thing is that when you have this mode activated and the active steering is also activated, so you basically can just rest your hands on here. It also only works at higher speeds. I tried it earlier on the highway. That system works pretty flawless, and it keeps the car in the center of the lane in a very smooth way and always centered. And this is so relaxing when you're stuck in traffic. Really cool system. And I wonder why this one works so smooth, like with keeping the lane, but the emergency lane keeping is, somewhat too reactive. I mean, it's maybe a different philosophy, and it should only be for emergency situations, but somehow the car thinks that those emergency situations would be, you know, would occur earlier than they actually do. So definitely interesting to have them. So we also have the blind spot monitor. That's definitely the option you should check. We have those triangles in the side mirrors. At the moment there's no one overtaking us because we are on those rather rural roads. But that's definitely a very interesting thing. The air suspension here again, if we have some bumps in the road, again I would expect it to be a little bit softer. It's still a very good suspension. What's it doing? Okay. But if I think about, for example, driving in the BMW 5 Series, I mean, those are related cars, but I've driven the adaptive suspension in the BMW 5 Series, and I felt it was softer than the air suspension used here in this car. I don't know. Strange one. Other than that, you have a good control feeling of the car. It doesn't feel as big as it is. It is very well to control, easy to steer, and again, you still have the possibility to drive in a sporty way. Always, that's what BMW is also promising. That's why people go for that brand. Let's go to the sport mode once again. So there we are. Always nice with those visualizations. Maybe they can be a little bit distracting, maybe, but pretty cool for sure. So last time I was here with BMW and I did some slalom on the road, just a little bit, but keeping in my lane. We got some of you telling me like, probably you shouldn't do that in the US. The police does not really like that, and I mean, police doesn't like that anyway, I think. But I mean, if they're a little bit stricter here with that, probably I leave it as it is. Now the speed limit goes up a little bit, so we're at 45, and then we could also, you know, let's drop behind and get you some acceleration there. Maybe even from a standstill when we get a little bit less crowded area here, so that will be very interesting. This updated head-up display is really pleasing, so all the time I'm seeing everything in my line of sight, like the speed I'm driving, the speed that is allowed. Also the GPS, I don't have it, you know, have the map mounted here now. There are some commands right there, but also I can see the GPS there, so pretty cool for that. So now I'm sport, I do some acceleration. All co-drivers hold tight. And let's see, let that Dodge pickup pass. Let's see also what happens when I push the brakes and hit the pedal to the metal. If we get some kind of launch control or something. So, and here we go. We can accelerate to 45 mph. That was already 52. So pretty quick. And since the all-wheel drive also has a smooth distribution, it feels kind of good and also, let's say, equalized. It's not that you get this massive push from the rear or you're being pulled from the front extremely. It always remains with a rear wheel bias, that all-wheel drive, but also gives you some more torque on the front wheels. So we have a very good acceleration, then very quick, but at the same time also good to bear. If you think, you know, the gravitational forces that are being applied to you. So that's pretty cool. And you see this engine does a lot of things right. You have enough power. The mileage is still quite okay, and nice sound also while accelerating. At the same time, silent when you want it to be silent. And now, some highway driving. Really decent sound. So because when we drive a little bit faster, we can also tell you more about the sound insulation once more and about those assistance systems on the highway. So here we go. It's always irritating for me, by the way, when I drive in the US with a US spec vehicle. that the side mirrors are zoomed in. That's pretty irritating. I more prefer the normal, the normal mirror as we have it in Europe. So here now we are at 70 mph. So remember 60 miles or 62 miles an hour is 100 kilometers. So 70 mph would be something like 110, 115 kilometers, something like that. I mean, it's the usual highway speed in most of the countries, maybe a little bit faster. And you see, I don't have to raise my voice that much. It's still pretty silent, even if a truck is overtaking me now. So that's a very comfortable ride. Now I can activate again the cruise control. Set it here at the steering wheel. Here you can also see those yellow triangles. They are yellow, by the way, not red. So yellow triangles when something would be appearing in the blind spot. So let me just move over that it appears for you. Now the next guy moved over. I mean, we have 4 lanes here, pretty luxurious. So here we have some Chevrolet Cruze or something coming. A small one. How was it called? A small one. There it is, the yellow triangle. Here we go. Spark. The Cruze is the bigger one, right? So, and now I also have this green steering wheel in the head-up display, and that means that this active steering is activated. So theoretically the car would drive itself now. Yeah, but that's not allowed. So I have to keep my hands on the steering wheel. You know, but just to show you that, you know, when I'm not really forcing the steering wheel somewhere, and we are in the left corner now, and so it's really gradually adjusting everything. And of course, very soon the car will stop. It's like, yeah, Thomas, take your hands on the steering wheel, don't do anything. So there it is, the yellow steering wheel, and then I have to take my hands on the steering wheel again, or the system would deactivate. So, and this active lane keeping system, when you set it yourself with the cruise control, works very, very well. And you can so much relax with that one. So yes, you still check the traffic and stuff, still have your hands on the steering wheel, but you can just relax more, you know, you don't have to react on everything. So, you know, that's really cool. By the way, you maybe have seen this black unit there in the instruments. That's actually a camera, and this goes even further, because in the US and in China it is allowed that this car drives really autonomously in traffic jam situations. And then the camera is checking basically that you still look to the front to check the traffic, because you have to do that so that, you know, like texting, smartphone, looking to the right, you know, chatting with the co-driver or something. That's really interesting. And this traffic situation, and the same goes for the lane changing, because when you hear, for example, when you hold this turning indicator, I did not change this, you know, I did not steer actually now, you know, that was the car. So there's this automatic semi-piloting lane changing. It's not when you put it all the way through, when you hold the turning indicator. And this is also the second thing that is just allowed in the US and China. And you might wonder now, wait a minute, Thomas showed me that in the Mercedes E-Class, for example, with lane change, and also like in the Volvo or with the Mercedes, showed me that actually that the turning indicator also works, you know, again, by the way. But why now just in the US and in China? Well, there has been a change in regulations, and in the EU it was basically made stricter to use those systems. That's really strange, because you would think that regulations more go in an autonomous driving way, but there also seem to be some drawbacks. And so every country has its own regulations. Like, for example, you know, in Europe you can get the 600 meter range for the laser light. In the US only 300 meters is allowed. And I think recently I also talked to Audi engineers who told me, oh, there's some tire relish on the ground there. So they told me that the Matrix LED would also not be allowed in the US. So, I mean, really different regulations, apart from those standard things like this US spec car has those yellow reflectors at the front, left and the right. which we don't have in EU, for example. But I mean, those are really minor differences. But I think on technology scale, maybe there should also be the countries maybe talking to each other and say, let's do some regulations together. That would come handy for customers for sure. So again, great highway car, sit upright, very comfortable. Those seats are great from the structure. Of course, again, I have the problem that with this surface you sweat a lot. Unfortunately, they put the fabric seats out of the program. In US, it wasn't available before anyway, I think, but in Europe they were available. I would tend to buy those, but then again, if they're not available, I would go with a Sensatec. I'm not sure if they're also available together with the ventilated seat function. We'll have to check the price list for that later on. Those are very specific details for sure. But other than that, the car makers try to make the car more identical now for the markets and don't try to mix up the trims too much. So that's also a trend, While regulations are still somewhat different, the car makers, or for example Ford made this so-called one Ford strategy. This is also one example for the manufacturers going, apart from those differences. Because, best example, US viewers here in Autogefühl see a Passat B8, like the recent iteration, in Europe and say why the hell do we get the Passat B7, the previous generation, that just facelifted? Why is that? And, are we fools or something? So this is a globalized automotive reporting world, and so car manufacturers also have to make their models globalized, because everyone wants to have the same, when they see them somewhere on the internet, on Autogefühl. So again, I mean, the road surface isn't quite rough, but still the car does a great job in riding very smooth and silent, and also when you do more sudden lane changes. Although we have the air suspension, did you see that? There was hardly any tilting, and maybe that's also the reason that they didn't put the anti-tilting function right here in this one with the air suspension, because it's still also sporty enough. And now to our off-road driving part for today. We start with just a short descent, and I don't need the hill descent control for that, but there's one available. You can activate it also, and then you can even adjust the speed. It starts with about 2 mph, and then you can also adjust the speed with the cruise control lever. So a lot of vehicles that have been coming out recently, they have reduced their off-road capabilities because customers don't really want it, they don't pick it. Recently the Volkswagen not the Tiguan, the Touareg, they removed the Terrain Tech package because they said it had a take rate of 1% and no one really took it. But BMW said, also with our US customer focus, where there's more off-road driving, for example, we want to increase the off-road capabilities. So we have this Bose axle air suspension now, and the height difference, as I said earlier, also is about 8 centimeters. Now we already lifted up the car all the way. We also put in the X Rocks mode. So this is a special off-road mode that is adjusting the electronic parameters for this off-road driving. The different off-road modes also available depending on the surface you're on. And I also have the DSC off, so I have some wheel spin possible when, for example, I need some wheel spin to get further. So this is of course soft off-road so far. We'll also face some more obstacles very soon. And I think the most important aspect here is for sure the air suspension with more ground clearance. When you have the off-road package, you can not only have this height adjuster, but also the off-road drive selector and also the underbody cover. So this is very important because, maybe also see that on camera when there's something on the ground that might be damaging the car from below. It's definitely safe to have that. And I mean, if you're somewhere where you have a off-road-ish driveway, this might be important for you. So I always keep my thumbs on the steering wheel when driving off-road because, at some point the steering wheel might move itself pretty quickly. So I don't intend to dislocate my thumbs just yet. so that's safer to do so. And since you have the air suspension, it's also a rather comfortable off-road drive. It's of course not the softest off-road drive, so you feel that this car has an air suspension which also supposed to work on-road very well. And I mean, that's also a good focus, you know. So they do not build an off-road car primarily. The primary use is on the road, and then the secondary use is off the road. So I think it's also a good emphasis that maybe off-road the air suspension is a little bit rougher than with some of the very, very true off-road vehicles. So that's absolutely fine. Now I'll put in the hill descent control right at the middle console, and that means I really have to trust in the vehicle now. So when I let go of the brakes, I really let go of the brakes, and now the car decelerates as if I would be on the brakes, but yeah, I'm doing nothing with the right foot, and the speed remains at 2 miles per hour. So that's just, you know, also just a couple of kilometers, and it's good to do it slow and steady. And the good thing is that, you know, the car really knows then how to apply the brakes, if they just in the right moment, and maybe not too hard, but also not too, you know, not too lazy, so to say. You can then again, if you have you know, slower downhill, you can also increase the speed, as I said, with the ACC. And now we're going uphill, and for that we can pick the camera system here. So now there's the front view camera. It's really good to have that one, because right now I can still see, but then, you know, the steeper it gets, now I don't see what's on the ground, and if there would be maybe like a big stone or something, now I have to apply some more throttle. Steady uphill, so don't accelerate it by just hammering the throttle, because you might just get wheel spin then, but you need a certain amount that the car gets going. Of course, you know, the individual wheel is also adjusted then. So with nowadays off-road cars, it's really cool because they are so capable that you don't have to be a super experienced off-road driver to do it yourself. So you also hear the PDC a little bit because the next trees so are quite close by. And well, considering it's a really huge car, it's actually quite versatile and agile here around those very narrow wood corners. I feel that the wheels are sliding just a little bit, but the car gives me a very controlled and good feeling. And now, for example, you can see it again in the camera that I don't hit the tree going over the next roots. Right there. But this car does not have the rear axle steering, since it's not so important for the US market. And this is basically a US spec vehicle, and you can of course order it. It might also make sense off-road, but of course more if you are in narrow cities and stuff and need some small turning circuits and so. But just to give you the information that this vehicle is not equipped with it. So the air suspension again gives me good comfort here still while driving off-road. So if there's a fierce bump, it doesn't go through to my lower back all the time. And this is of course very important to keep it safe and comfortable off-road driving. So the front camera is also adjusting all the time, that you can see it. You also have this top view from above. You can zoom in, for example, to special cameras to the sides. So you're all safe with that too. So now steady applying the throttle again to get this uphill. And indeed, I have to say, if you also compare it to the previous generation, it's way easier to drive off-road. And one more downhill together with a sand passage. And that's especially tricky because when it gets slick, you can also see it in the car in front of us, the white one. So when it gets slick on the downhill, this is where it gets really tricky. And what I have felt so far with my off-road experience here is that the car is really very smooth in all the electronic support it gives you. So here, for example, I did not use the brakes at all. The car detected what's underneath me and feels what the tires, the individual tires, are actually doing. And so you can just take a leap of trust and just leave the brakes, and then the car does it for you. So And I think what they have achieved is that all those electronic support, is not only managing that you get through the obstacles, but also if I compare it with some of the other off-road vehicles I've driven, again, the transitions, between the regulations of the stability controls and the individual braking of the tires is really smooth. And this also calms you down a little bit when you're driving off-road. So I can again trust on the camera system here in the front, that I can see the track. Also have to watch out that I don't hit the trees with my side mirrors. So, and uphill again, steady on the throttle. So, I mean, theoretically we could also be standing still and start again. The car would be capable of doing that. And of course, the harder the off-road terrain gets, it's always good to keep going, especially when you're uphill, just keep going a little bit with steady speed. So here we go. Still have the hill descent control activated. Now I can apply the throttle a little bit, that we go a little bit faster. Now some rocks underneath, and so we now switch back from the camera system to the X off-road view. So I can, for example, see steepness of the angles. It's also interesting just to look at it, for example, also as a co-driver. So pretty entertaining as well. So what about this generation, the fourth generation of the X5? The exterior, for sure, a very strong one, the strongest one so far, but surely also an evolution. The interior, more refined, they stepped up the game in the build quality, that's really great. You have a lot of very smooth solutions, then also more digitalized, that's for sure, but in some cases also quite complicated when you think about the infotainment system software. Also, I find it a little disturbing that the rear legroom is not sufficient for the size of that vehicle. Still, it's possible to drive there with good comfort with 4 adults. And, well, driving is the specialty of a BMW, and that also accounts for the X5. It drives so well. Today here with the air suspension, a smooth ride, but not as smooth as you would, for example, have it with, like a Mercedes GLE or Volkswagen Touareg. They are more in a soft way. Here you still have an air suspension which still can be driven in a sporty way. That's the strategy that BMW follows. And if you want it even sportier, then you would go with the adaptive M suspension. Definitely this generation is so super silent in the ride. A very surprisingly silent ride. And of course you are like a king of the road, the full-size SUV feeling. And if you have this rear axle steering optional, then you can also reduce the turning circle, for example, to make it a little bit more agile. And there will also be some cool functions Brian showed you in his review already, the static review, where you can, for example, fold back the rear floor, the back cover for the trunk. So cool solutions they have invented there to make it even more flexible for that. The Mercedes GLE. We're going to take a look at the dancing GLE, this lowrider style. We'll tell you all about this new technology and of course in general about the exterior, the interior and the driving experience, comparing to the predecessor and also comparing to some of the competitors on the market. I can promise you it will be a very interesting review. So welcome here today to Texas. It's very fitting for this vehicle for sure. And well, it's built not here in Texas, but in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, together with the GLS. That will also be basically the same vehicle, just a little bit longer than for the third seating row to have a little bit more room for that then. Well, in the front you can see this is the standard grille with this dual fin design. You can also get the AMG line exterior. Then you will have this dot structure. You can see that, for example, also with our car we had at the Paris Motor Show. Then it starts with LED headlamps. This one here is the multi-beam LED, so for 650 meters of high beam range. And two, let's say, C signatures for the daytime running light. This is same as for the E-Class sedan. Here also signalizes the E in the GLE. The color here is hyacinth red. But we also have some other colors for you, for example, this obsidian black, and there are some other colors which sometimes look also very dark but have a color tone in it. For example, this emerald green. It looks a little bit brighter in bright light then as well. Same, we also have two blue tones here already to show you. The one is cabin side blue, but also a brilliant blue. That would come closer to a Thomas blue, which I really would prefer. But also a Designo diamond white bright also does fit to the car. We also had that in a static Paris Motor Show episode. But of course our red car here today is also really attractive as it is a rather bright color. Or what about rather a silver or more gray style? Which one would you pick? The length is 4,92 meters or 16 foot 1. That is about 10 centimeters longer than the predecessor, or 8 centimeters longer in the wheelbase. Let's see how that one plays out for the interior. You can see you can either get those crossover wheeled arches, standard one, or if you go for the AMG line exterior pack. By the way, interior and exterior AMG, you can pick that freely, it's not connected. Then with the AMG, it is in vehicle color. 18 to 22 inch rims. Those ones here are 21 inch rims. So almost the biggest ones, and they look surely massive already. Then this side step, you do not have to get it. It looks also pretty cool for getting in and out. You can argue for and against it, I think. Then what is really significant, there's nothing special here in the side profile. It's pretty much upright. That's good for the visibility. This C-pillar here has this typical GLE, or before that the M-Class shape. They stick to that, and this gives the car also a pretty unique design feeling. And suspension-wise, this is the most interesting aspect about this car probably. It starts with a base suspension, base steel suspension. Then you can pop up the air suspension, the normal air suspension, and then based on that, there's the new e-active body control. They have the air suspension plus a hydro pneumatic system, and they can also move one individual wheel. It's pretty interesting to see that then from the exterior. Also interesting to experience it from the interior. And this enables a lot of different functions. For example, a curve function that it leans inside the corner. But also, that is also pretty cool to see, when you're, for example, off-road, then the car starts hopping a little bit. When you're, for example, in loose sand, and then you start driving and the car can basically get out of the loose sand by that. And if you activate a show program, that one is not available. The other ones we shown you before with the red car, that is all available. But then the white car now, this is a pure show program that is not available. They just programmed it, but you can see you can also use it as a low rider then, just for fun. Let me also show you different driving modes and stuff, and one of them is also off-road. Then the car is getting pumped higher, and then you can use those special functions. When you then use the suspension button, you get to the free driving assistant or to the individual wheel control. This is very interesting because then you can really, for example, put the car on the right all the way up and all the way down on the left. I hope you can also see that now from the inside on camera. You've seen it from the outside now pretty much. Now if we switch that around, here also left side to the other side again, it's really interesting, And then, for example, if you lost some traction on one wheel and then want to put it down or up to face the next obstacle, well, I'm not sure who will actually do that in real time or in real life, but it's possible. Let's take it that way. Then the free driving assistant, this one is then how it shakes free basically, and then you can start and also drive slowly with it. And now the car is going like this. You can also maybe see it from the inside. It's really funny feeling. And then, for example, you can also get over. We have a sand barrier here now, where it was a little bit loose, and now we can also get over the sand barrier a little bit easier. And it also works when you're driving back. This is of course just a showcase here. This will make more sense when you are in a real dune situation also. In the rear, the car in the new generation looks a little bit sleeker due to those new tail lamps with the LED daytime running light signature. And I think you can really do that. Horizontal shape. By the way, Michigan number plate, because Mercedes has their importer organization for the US player. So that's pretty lucky for us, because we don't need a front number plate, which always looks better then. Well, in the lower part, this is of course always a lot of discussion here at Autogefühl with the fake exhaust. The real exhaust is underneath the car. Designers do that to have more design freedom in the rear. But a lot of the customers also want an honest design, so you can always argue pro and against that for sure. And by the way, you also can still get an off-road gear reduction if you want a really hard off-road use. If you then combine the off-road gear reduction with the e-active body control, that should make a very off-road capable car. I hope we'll also have a chance to do that at the later stage, to get it maybe in some hard off-road or sand situations, because there are already some competitions. People say, yeah, is it maybe even more off-road capable than a G-Class with all this technology inside? That will be clarified at the later stage. So what do we have under the hood? For the US exclusively, there will be a 350 petrol engine, 4-cylinder with 300 horsepower. Then this one here is a 6-cylinder petrol engine, 3 liter of displacement, 367 horsepower with a mild hybrid system, 48 volt board net. So a little bit bigger battery for recuperation and all the, for example, the e-active body control. So this is here needed, the 6-cylinder 48 volt board net for the e-active body control. It will also be available for a 6-cylinder diesel. This then will be the 400D with 330 horsepower, or the 350D with 272 horsepower. And there will also be a 300D, a 4-cylinder with 245 horsepower. So the diesel's primarily for Europe, the petrol, especially the smaller petrol, especially for the US. And the 450, this is here basically the so far top model, but there will also be a V8 petrol later on, including an AMG variant, the 63 probably. Interesting, by the way. Do you see this one here? Rubber pads. It seems that this should actually protect this area here from collecting leaves. Everyone knows that you open the hood and everything is full of leaves, especially in this area, but maybe this is protecting it. Looking forward at this one will work on the long-term run. And last but not least, they are also planning to release a plug-in hybrid, supposed to have a pure electric range of 100 kilometers. That's really true. We'll find out at a later stage. This is a nicely slim designed key. And of course you have the keyless entry, you can close it, and also the mirror flips in, or put your hand on the inside, flips out, opens the vehicle. Option is also a soft close, like this. Just do it once more. Here we go. For all doors then. Then, inside of the doors, everything is very upright, it opens quite wide. Leatherette cover, good quality. Then a matte wood, really feels very well. You can adjust the seat right here, then memory, three functions, then seat heating, seat cooling, and from here then if you press this one and use this, you can control the co-driver seat. Optional 3D Burmester sound system. Wow, what a sound, soon more to that. Galvanized window levers, so top build quality. Instead of the doors you have actually a lot of room also for putting bigger bottles. You open the trunk right there, also with the key, also with the foot kick opening mechanism is working too. Then if you look at this new interior, you can see this is a black panel, one black big panel, 2 times 12.3 inch screens. We will soon give you another perspective on that. The steering wheel has the adaptive cruise control on the steering now. So you can have also the electric controls here, and also the heated steering wheel function is hidden here just behind the steering wheel. You can only basically see it from here and not from the driver's perspective, just under the shifting column. Then those seats here, optional animal skin pack, but Mercedes is among the best next to Tesla to offer also animal friendly materials. So in Germany, for example, you start then with the fabric on the inside and the leatherette on the outside. Really cool, best also for the summer and winter temperatures, both. Then there's also in the AMG line interior is microfiber Dynamica on the inside and leatherette on the outside. This is available for almost all markets. And then in the US and also in European markets, you can get 3 different colors of full leatherette seats, the so-called Artico or MB Tech seats, depending on the naming on the market, in 3 colors, either like this, like in beige, in espresso, a little bit brown, or in black. So 3 different leatherette colors, microfiber choice and fabric choice for some of the European markets. So really good sustainable materials they are also offering, and the comfort will be just the same. Getting inside is super easy, but somehow I think the side step here is rather annoying than helping me. It just looks a little bit fancy, and the door opens very wide, as I said. And what a great comfortable seating position here. You sit upright, have the full SUV command driving position. Wow, you can just relax in those seats. And as I said, the other seats will also have very good comfort. And you also have a new seat massage function in different functions. We can show you that in the infotainment system. We've tested it already, worked very well because it also goes really up high to the body. You can also, of course, electronically adjust everything. Also the lower area here can make it longer or shorter, for example. And the steering wheel looks like this, so you can find a good position. 1.86 m or 6'1" my height, and this one is the room above my head. There's a panoramic roof inbuilt here, so if you don't have one, it would be even a little bit longer, but you can see it's absolutely fine also with the panoramic roof, even if you're tall. Interior overview, top part also with the leatherette cover, then a very seamless integration of this dual screen. And there you can see them, how they are turned on. This one here, the right one, is also touch. You can also use this lower pad here to zoom in and out, for example, the map, but also to control everything right and left. Also with the right thumb here at the steering wheel, this is also possible, so redundant controls basically. And the left side, this is no touch, but you can use the left thumb and to control the functions, but also what is on the right side, for example, or on the left side. So a lot to do. You have to, you can spend a lot of time controlling everything. Most of the stuff you won't really use, but I'll show you what are the most important stuff to use. Then the matte wood element here. Those vents here, some like them, some don't. They are, of course, really huge as for the whole interior space. Still, you can control the temperature in a rather manual way, nice clicking sound. That's good to just use that while driving, for example. Turn the car on, I can also show you then, yes. Always so many warning sounds when you, for example, start the car not using seatbelt or whatever, or have the lights turned on and so on. So now the temperature is changing. Also with the voice control, for example, either activate it here at the steering wheel or say, "Hey Mercedes,
How can I help you?
set temperature to 72 degrees.
I'm setting the temperature to 72 degrees.
yeah, for example, like this, or also then drive me to Houston. Let's see if the GPS will respond to that.
I am starting route guidance to Houston.
Yeah, that worked very well. Remember, it always has to do with the internet connection. When the internet connection is very good, it will work well. Here also with a live traffic situation, then you can see, where is it going, and this is pretty helpful for sure. So cool feature that you don't have to type everything in while driving. So in here you can see the traffic delay is 7 minutes at the moment, and then you can also see like if there's a route which is maybe marked red and you want to take something else or so, you can zoom in and out like this then, or also at the touchpad I've shown you earlier. So this is both possible, and this is how it looks like. It's really cool and it's helpful. And there's a special function with the augmented reality. So when you're approaching the next intersection, then you see it basically with the front view camera plus an augmented reality sign. That was really helpful. Cool to have that. It's a new feature, and I think here I learned to use it a little bit better now, and how it's really helpful then, especially in city traffic situations where you don't really know where you're going exactly. Here then, for example, also mark then where is the traffic situation. Other than that, with the infotainment system here in the main menu, you can, this is here, the comfort function is really cool with the different seat massage. Is for driver and co-driver, of course, it's an option, but they're really cool to help you relax for sure. Then what is also, well, it's a little bit complicated to reach the CarPlay. You have to go to smartphone then, and then you can get to the Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. And I can also show you that when I plug in the phone. So have it right here, and then I just need, well, in this case, because I got the normal Apple cable, but then I also need this adapter for the USB-C device. So, and then it's usually also coming quite quickly. Oh, there's Schmoozy. So now unlock. So here we go. There we are. So there we have it. Then, by the way, this haptical feedback for the touchpad is not working anymore, but you can play your music and at the same time use the sat-nav from Mercedes. That would be also very important to me. And what is also pretty cool is the camera system. I start the engine for that, then go, yes, I don't have the seatbelt on. So here we go with the camera system. When we put on the reverse gear, for example, we can see it. This is, the fake drone view from above. And you can also pick different camera perspectives, and everything is really crystal clear. It's, for example, also that you don't damage your rims, left and right screen. So really useful stuff. Those digital instruments, you can control them with the left thumb, and then you can also have, for example, GPS information there, the trip information, or also change some of the designs and have, for example, a more sporty look. This is possible to have that one then. Also with the GPS route in the middle. So you're pretty flexible with those digital gauges. Maybe also this progressive look. This one could also be, and then you can again switch what one have in the middle, left or right. And the head-up display shows GPS information, allowed speed and the current speed, and the projection field is really huge. It looks so small on camera, believe me, it is even bigger. So now to the sound system, which is really amazing, the 3D sound. There's also some settings you can access right there. Here's the Burmester settings, but I just leave it as it is and it will do just fine, because it's so amazing how surround dish it is. Wow. Amazing. From those speakers there, of course, but also inside and also at the rear of the car is really absolutely cool. You can, by the way, also select a VIP seating area. So you can select one single seat, and then it's basically for me, or here then, for example, on the right side, you hear the difference, or for the rear, But I just like it, you know, when it's all around for all seats. You can also pick different sound profiles. For example, at the moment 3D is selected. Surround is also cool. This is more echo-alike, but 3D also more comes from the rear. So this is definitely my favorite setting, and I think the best system on the market at the moment. Nice matte wood cover here also for the middle console. You can slide that one open like this. Then you have the inductive charging pad for your phone. Works like, oh. Last time it was really funny because the cork cover here, which is actually pretty cool. People saying, oh, do you have a slice of bread in the car? That was really funny. Now Holger has to laugh and shakes the camera. So here, USB-C ports. This one to connect the smartphone, the other one just to charge it. They use USB-C because when Apple also goes USB-C, everyone is going USB-C then on the long-term run. Then adaptive cup holders right here, and they can be cooled and heated. So this is also a nice system. Was there in the previous generation before though. Then this touchpad here is, for example, possible that you can use it while driving instead of just using the touch screen. The nav hotkey here, this one will be used quite often, I guess. This is just to put your hand here, but not that useful. Panic handle. Then you also have the air suspension control here, or also the suspension control. This one here for the special suspension features. This one here that will directly lift up the air suspension or down. Then if you open this middle armrest like this, well, you can, there's not so much room beneath it. You can put another smartphone there, also with another USB-C charger. But you know, that's actually not that big. But I think overall you have enough cubby holes available. I really love this bright interior also with the ceiling, but you can put even more light to the car when you open this shade. You see the panoramic roof really goes all over the vehicle, and it takes a lot of time until the shade is open. Yeah, I think we have to wait first. Now we go. So, and then we can open it completely like this to give some more fresh air, and also look how wide it is actually. So let's see, yeah, that should be, yeah, that's the maximum. So pretty cool. Now to the rear. This is really interesting, I can promise you. First of all, the door opens quite wide. You can get in quite easily. I have the seat as I would be driving, as a tall driver. So there's 7 centimeters more legroom in this new generation if you compare it to the predecessor. And this rear bench is movable about 10 centimeters. At the moment, it's all the way back. This is better legroom, for example, than in the BMW X5. However, you also sit more leaned back. You can see it like this here. So you can also make it a little bit steeper. That's possible, but lean back, I mean the lower area. You can see here the pelvis is basically tilted backwards. I have read one comment where you said like, oh, I like to sit that way. I personally don't. I'm more like, you know, to sit like more upright, like in a chair. I think that's better for long-term comfort. Well, electronic controls is optional. Also, if you don't go for this 10 centimeters movable bench, you are actually left with a fixed bench. So there's no manual control then or something. Here, you can put it forward like this. Even in the forward position, I could still sit here. That's very interesting. So then in this case, you also have more trunk area, and you can even adjust the headrest here. You can see it right there behind me, electronic headrest control. So pretty interesting system here. And you're also flexible, and well, it's basically like an executive seating. But then again, I don't like that that seating bench goes backward. Then again, this also gives you enough headroom. So if you look here, that's also okay in the rear, also for tall people. Middle armrest. Front, you have some cup holders. Isofix on the outside of the seats each to install the child seats. And then there's also another control. Let me just put in the ignition, put on the ignition. So here So now I had to turn on the engine, that also the rear climate unit works. You can see, control everything here then. That's an option, of course. And in the lower part, another USB-C supply right there. Here, actually two. Here it looks like one. Now there's two. 1, 2, 1, 2. Homer Simpson style. At least from my perspective. Come on. Then there's also another plug socket, also available. And you can see the middle tunnel is not that high that people can actually sit in the middle seat also quite properly. Yes, I still look weird when I'm here on the middle seat, but it's actually quite soft in the middle part, and you can put your feet like this on the middle tunnel. That's not possible quite often. Of course, if they are, it's always possible like this most of the time, because people then will have their legs right here. So that will still work, and also headroom wise. By the way, those mounts here are for the optional rear seat entertainment system. And then there's also the function from here, from the rear area, electric knob. There's this one here, that the seat can be folded up like this. This one then will guarantee you an access if you have the optional third seating row, which is not equipped with this vehicle, but if you go for this option, then you could enter the rear like this. So let's open that hatch. So here we go. 825 liters is the standard setup, up to 2055 liters. And the standard length here is just a meter until the cover here. Very well in the build quality too. Then replacement tire. This cover here does not have any rails. The reason is that there's also the possible another seating row. So this is of course a little wobbly right here. Don't like it that much. Then some light right there. And let me just show you the width. This is just a little bit more than a meter. It's like a meter and 1 meters 10 is it in the width. So, and the height here until the cover, height until the cover is 46 centimeters, and then the height until the top part, this is about 80 centimeters. So on the right side you can see some small buttons, and with those buttons here I can electrically first of all lower the car with the air suspension for the loading process. That will be possible, and then I push it right here, and then the seat goes in the front. The co-driver seat also moves forward a little bit. The same is happening with those seats here. Unless you have the engine running, then this would not be working, basically to protect the driver, because when the engine running it would think the car that the driver is still active somehow. So, and now what do you have in length? This is just 2 meters now, this stick, so it's almost 2 meters then up to the front seat. And if you would use the middle part here to push through longer things, it's not only 2 meters, yeah, it's like to the very front console, it's 2 meters and 60, 2 meters 66, approximately like this. So those were all the numbers. If I put a backpack here inside, there you can also see the dimensions, so you can really very well use it. 45 liters more, by the way, than the predecessor. Of course, when you have the third seating row, then the trunk will approximately end just like here. So the third seating row of course makes more sense if you have a GLS than later on, which is basically, let's say, a long wheelbase GLE as in the current generations.
It's a good room to load vegetables?
Yes, you can load a lot of vegetables in here. I think especially pumpkins, since we're here in the US. And this is what equals the 2055 liters or 72 cubic feet in pumpkins. The tasty butternut. Here in this case also some that are not for eating, but if you think about it, this pile would be just in there. That's pretty impressive, right? So what about city driving and highway driving in the GLE? So I start up and almost hear nothing, so it's really silent. And we just start right here. I see this huge head-up display. This is of course helping me with the GPS, but especially with the speed. So the speed I'm currently driving and the speed I'm actually allowed to drive.
In 200 feet at the traffic light.
This is interesting. So I
Now turn right.
had the sound still on for you, and there you can see this information now with the augmented reality. So I have this street name of the next intersection right there, and I also can see then, what is it, showing me that I have to turn right now
In a quarter of a mile, keep
in
right.
this street. So I have the acoustic commands, then I have this augmented reality right there, and I also have the information in the head-up display, and I could also have it here in the digital instruments. So there are then GPS commands wherever you like it, basically. I mean, it's good to have it in an an additional way, and definitely this is helping one of the interesting new technologies. So, well, the car does feel more agile than the predecessor generation due to all the new technology and the suspension. It doesn't feel too big. It is a full-size SUV. It gives you this feeling. But of course, here in Texas, we also have those very big roads. Here again, the augmented reality, very interesting to see. First roundabout, I'm at the moment, let's see, in the normal comfort mode.
Turn right and then immediately turn
And in the comfort and in the so-called curve mode, which we'll soon show you, this e-active body control and new suspension, now turn right.
In 500
Okay.
feet, turn left
So,
onto I-35.
that's always good to have the acoustic command, especially if you are talking while driving, and that might happen that you talk to your co-driver, for example. Also interesting to see the front camera then active, always really interesting. So you have to get used to this full pack of technology for sure. But this is then now really helpful. I think I have to go here on the interstate, yeah. So then we can drive also a little bit faster. And here with the comfort mode, the suspension is basically scanning the road ahead and then deciding what it's going to do. Also in this curve mode, not in the other modes. Oh, those trucks are going quite fast here. So, always a little bit confusing with those very zoomed in, so to say, mirrors in the US. I like them more in the EU, where we have a more realistic mirror image in the side mirror for sure. So this comfort setting here is definitely very comfortable. We have the air suspension plus this hydro pneumatic suspension. So it really is like a flying carpet on the road. It's also softer than, for example, the BMW X5. Here you still feel it is an air suspension. In the comfort mode, the steering is a little bit loose here in the small angles. That is, for example, better with the BMW X5 or with the Porsche Cayenne. So here I would like to have some more feeling in the very small angle areas. As soon as you steer a little bit more, then the feeling comes to you. But definitely you can also shake up the car a little bit. That's also speaking for the rather soft setup of the suspension. Now 60 miles an hour, so that's 100 kilometers. And we can also test the assistance systems. Full packed here this week, and I really have to get used to this huge head-up display. This is almost taking half of the road. And those assistance systems are working really flawless here. At the moment, I'm basically doing nothing with accelerating or braking. The distance to the car in front of me is being kept. I would love to turn up the music volume here once more again. I told you earlier, the sound system is really superb. Interesting is that we have some more driving modes here for sure. Sport mode, for example, the gears are turned up higher. That's more something for a dynamic driving part. and also this curve mode I've been talking about, because in this curve mode the car is leaning inside the corner. That doesn't play a role here for the motorway, you don't feel it, but as soon as you have more corners, then it really is a lot of fun. Even in the city, it somehow makes sense for sure. I can also show you that with another lane change here, for example. Blind spot monitor, there's a red triangle is appearing in the side mirror. This is of course a very helpful one. So if I just do a lane change here, it's incredible. The car is really leaning in the corner again, and this is even fun at the motorway. And it also reduces the G-forces, for example, that are applied to poor co-drivers. When we drive so fast. Well, and I mean, maybe even making more sense here for the motorway is the eco mode. So there the throttle input is being reduced, the fuel economy should be better then, and we'll keep on driving just for a second to give you a low fuel consumption, which is possible when we're just more at steady speed. So I did some city driving now, and now some highway driving at steady speed. This steady speed driving is always the best to keep the low consumption. So let the next truck pass, then you can see the blind spot monitor once more. There's a red triangle, and when I try to set the turning indicator right now, this is also flashing then, the red triangle, and you also heard the sound, so the car is actively warning me. So what I found a little bit better with the previous generations was that at the left side here of the steering, you could easily deactivate all of the assistance systems if you not really keen on one or two of those. That's not possible here, so they have removed the buttons, and also regulations nowadays tell the manufacturers to basically have all the assistance systems activated so that they pass the crash safety tests and so on. So here you can check out the digital instruments, then go to the assistance systems. Of course, not really recommended to do that while driving, and then you can change them around a little bit. But that's again also a little bit complicated, so I would rather not do that. So here, for example, you can see then the distance to the car in front of me, and I can also set it here at the steering wheel at the left side if the distance shall be increased or reduced. Definitely a very calm ride. I mean, we're in the full-size SUV and it's really silent, so I don't have to raise my voice that much. It's super comfortable. So suspension-wise, I mean, this E-Active Body Control is cool for off-roading for sure, and this curve function, it's technology highlight for sure. But if you want to spend a little bit less money and just go with the air suspension, you'll also be just fine. Then you also have this smooth carpet ride. And that's what I expect from an air suspension. If I want an air suspension, I want that very smooth and soft ride. I don't want that super sporty stiff ride. Then I can go for another suspension, That's how I think about air suspensions. What do you think about it? And tell me in the comments, please. So this is really cool, and I have to say, when I go for the full-size SUV, I also want that comfortable ride. So I think this one is now my favorite ride as for the full-size comfortable SUVs. And seating is also upright and really just pleasant. And I could very well imagine just, even if it's quite boring now, just to go with 60 miles an hour and just straight. Yes, it's boring, but it's also super comfortable in this vehicle. So definitely among the best I've driven as for the comfort. What's Holger's verdict for today? Thumbs up for the car. He's not sleeping yet, but I think it's still more. Sometimes, when I'm also talking in an ASMR way, and we have a very comfortable car, and then I look around after 10 minutes like, but, oh, the car must be good.
Don't believe him, don't.
Yeah, okay. So you see, we are having fun. We are really relaxed, although we also had long flight from Germany and stuff. That's of course always quite stressful then. But we really enjoy driving here in the US, of course, to deliver you the most early car reviews always. So this is definitely a super great performing highway vehicle, no doubt about that. So let's go back to this trip meter. And so after cruising now a little bit, it have some city driving in the mix, we're now approaching about 23 mpg. That's about 10 liters on 100 kilometers and is okay considering the size of the vehicle. 6-cylinder here, 3 liter of displacement, 367 horsepower. With this EQ boost or EQ power, so to say, so this is the mild hybrid system. Let me also give you some info about that. So when I'm, for example, accelerating really hard, then this is giving me some additional boost. However, when I'm, for example, now going down just a little bit, or when I apply the brakes, then you see it here, it says charge, and this digital instrument is then running full. So it's recuperating in this bigger battery, in this 48 volt board net bigger battery, which is, for example, used for this curve tilting system. So many technology highlights in this vehicle that they need this 48 volt board net to supply it everything. So because you need a lot of electric power for that, for sure. And it's also supposed to bring the consumption down just a little bit. But however, always when I tested those systems, they didn't have the biggest effect. Yes, you can have some recuperation. Then again, the weight is a little bit higher maybe. On paper, it brings down the consumption pretty much. But in reality, it doesn't have the biggest effect of all. So, but definitely already some very useful information here also from city and highway driving. Really cool. By the way, there's also this active steering system available. So it is basically keeping the car in lane, but you should not do that. You should always keep your hands on the steering wheel. So if I put my hands off the steering wheel, the car is also telling me, don't do that, and then it's shutting off the system. So, but it's not really intrusive. You know, that was also a problem in the X5. So when we were getting closer to the sides, it was like overreacting. Maybe we can induce that here now on purpose and also test that, if that is any better here. So let's just pretend I would be, you know, tired a little bit and then getting off the lane here. That was quite okay. That was okay. And interesting, by the way, that the X5 and especially BMW in general and also some other manufacturers, they are doing that with active steering. Here, interestingly, and we have experienced that with other Mercedes models, they do that with braking. So in this moment, for example, I was going off to the right side, and then there was some torque adjustment with the brakes that the left wheels were a little bit slower, and then the car was, of course, turning to the left again. Very interesting. Especially in the C-Class, this system was, whoa. It's always scary when you're in a car and then the truck appears next to you that is even bigger than you. So, welcome to America. What the? Oh, I so would love to have like a McLaren or something now and do this, you know, movie style, like going just under the truck, you know those movie scenes? That would be amazing, right? Was it from Bandit as well, I think? Bandit movie, yeah. Burt Reynolds. That was amazing. Yeah. But I think I can't do that with a GLE. That maybe we would have a GLE convertible after. We don't want to have that. Well, Mercedes doesn't want to have that. I think GLE convertible would be pretty cool, wouldn't it? Yeah. So back to those, running off the lane and stuff. So in the C-Class, for example, and also in the A-Class, this system with getting off the route was super aggressive, and you were coming a little bit close to the lane, and then it's like was counter reacting with the braking maneuver. But here, obviously, did some more fine-tuning, and this is really okay. You know, you're being kept in the lane, but without, being super surprised or the system being too aggressive. So good that they also have, some development there in this case. Really like that. So, I think those were the aspects here from the highway driving. and some countryside driving, also here to enjoy the scenic route at the Guadalupe River near San Antonio. And with cruising, by the way, I could bring the car to 26 mpg, that would be 9 liters on 100 kilometers. That's pretty decent, considering the size and the weight, of course, more than 2 tons of the car. So that's really cool, but of course more realistic when you have some acceleration in it. 9 liters or 23 mpg is more realistic for sure. So this curve function, I just want to show you that once more, because we can hear now curve left and right. This is really interesting. I'm not sure how you can really see it on the camera, but it's always that when I go to, for example, to the left front dives in, and to the right, then the right front dives in. That is really interesting. At some point, I think it would even pay off to show that on a racetrack. I think that you can really see that. Of course, you've also seen the exterior shots where the suspension dived in, and that's the same that is basically happening. So when you're driving slowly, it doesn't make such a difference. The faster you go, the more difference it makes, and probably even also in the city. Again, I can just stress how relaxing it is to drive the car, and although it is big, now for example, you know, when you're having also up and down, then the next corner, then the anti-curve or anti-tilt function makes sense. And the car also doesn't need some more other assistance systems then, because this active suspension basically handles it all. And that's also the reason why, well, that's a big bird, why they did not go for the rear axle steering, for example. They said that's really enough to make the car agile. And indeed, I do not miss the rear axle steering here. It would be quite cool to reduce the turning circle, you know, as in the new Touareg or in the Cayenne or in the X5. But then again, this system here has definitely other advantages and is also superior in other ways then, definitely. The engine, by the way, you can hardly hear it, especially when you're just rolling. But when you're driving very slow, whoa, oh, that animal was already dead, too bad. It's always painful to see road kills, really painful. So try to avoid them as much as possible. So when you're just very slightly on throttle, not sure if you can hear this, it's like this. You hear something going on the engine, but I think you just hear that because it's so silent in all other surroundings that you can hear those very, very minor sounds. Of course, if you go to the sport mode, then you hear more of the engine, or here, for example, in Sport Plus even, then you can hear something more, you know, like gears are turned up higher as well in the RPMs, but still it's very subtle. So they try really to keep a low noise volume. The sport mode is really more that you, for example, have a stiffer suspension, so I have a little stiffer steering now, and there's also more throttle input, and the suspension gives me more feedback. It does not dive into the corners now, as with the curve mode, but it's stiffer in general. So you can argue then which is sportier. The curve mode definitely is somehow more fun because it's for sure just more special. Here, for example, now there's a corner. I go back to the curve mode. It works instantaneously. Car dives back in. That's pretty cool. Always nice to cross the river here again, so a very nice and scenic drive. The only thing that's too bad, when you're not driving in Germany, you cannot drive that fast. So the speed limits here are very strict. So you can't, in Germany, such a route like this here would be 60 miles speed limit, 100 kilometers. Here is the half, 30 miles. So, I mean, for sure better to keep people safe. That's pretty clear. So we'll of course at the later stage also do a German Autobahn test with this vehicle, where then it's also something more about the acceleration of the engine and also how it handles at higher speeds. But I think it's definitely good to have both, because especially our American viewers, they will more have situations like those. Then also all the cruising features play a bigger role than, you know, all the performance features, for example. We're now approaching a red traffic light, and we can hopefully do some more acceleration, for example. Now I have, by the way, GPS all over the place really. I also have it in the middle of the digital instruments as well. So that's just for going left, but we want to go straight. Silence. You hear nothing from the exterior. It's really interesting. So let's go back to the Sport Plus mode again. And now we can drive 45, and I'll just drop back just a little bit in speed, that we can really accelerate. I can also show you that. So now it's 45 in speed limit. We just passed this house. So, and now I'll just stop just a little bit and hammer the throttle from 0. Let's see. Well, that's already 50 mph. So pretty impressive. And that was also a nice sound, you know, not too not too distracting or something, not too loud. Really nice 6-cylinder sound. Of course, you have more performance than when you go for the V8 option later. 5.7 seconds to 60 miles or 100 kilometers an hour. We could not really test it here because the speed limit is 45. But still very decent in the acceleration. Now we can also go a little bit faster here in the Sport Plus mode or in the Sport mode. Stiffer from the feedback, definitely. Now it's also a little bit better than with the dead zone in the center, but still there's not too much reaction in the first few degrees. Here you can see it. I'd like to have that a little bit more. But still, even if you're in a Sport or Sport Plus mode, the suspension remains comfortable enough. Yes, it is stiffer, and when you're going over some potholes or something, you feel it more, but it still remains comfortable, suitable. Let's go back to the curve mode once more. Here now, when at higher speed, it has an even bigger effect, for sure. For example, let's get here in now just to show you that. Or maybe just like do a U-turn here. It's really interesting how the suspension dives, and wow, it feels incredible. Really feels incredible.
Turn right. Now turn right.
Now stop sign. It's really a lot of fun to drive the car, although it's a big and heavy car. We had this curve function in the S-Class Coupe a couple of years back, but it hasn't been implemented in that way in an SUV for sure. So what do you think? Here you can again very well see the difference to the diamond pin AMG grille here in the front and the normal front grille. Well, the general exterior is not a revolution, rather an evolution, and even a little bit bigger the car. Once again, if you think about the original ML, for example, is the size of a today's GLC. So generation by generation, the vehicle has grown. On the interior then, of course, have more room and fully digitalized, so it's a sensual design, but at the same time really high-tech, also with a good voice command activation. Then technology-wise, of course, the highlight is the new suspension. It's not really a must-have, but it is for sure one of the technology highlights and also ahead of the competition in this case. Looking forward also to the special off-road features, which we hopefully can test in a hard off-road test. This will be very exciting, I can promise you. But in general, also for road driving, I mean, the air suspension is of course cool. If you spend so much money then for this e-active body control, that's another thing, because, I mean, starting at the 66,000 with a normal diesel in Germany, for example, then going more expensive towards 80,000 for the bigger petrol engine, more equipment. And as the cars are here today, of course, more than 100,000 euros or dollars. That's Again, very expensive, but the competition is not really cheaper. To me, it's the most comfortable ride in the competition overall on the market, here with the full-size SUV segment. Others, maybe like the Porsche Cayenne or the BMW X5, are sportier, but this one here, for me, the comfort king. Exterior, interior and the driving performance will be today in our episode. Vizcaya Blue, the exterior color, not quite Thomas Blue, but already a very attractive color for sure, something different. Interior, a lot of sporty elements and the driving experience. Already the base petrol engine will give you a launch control. We will show you that, the acceleration, very powerful, and this engine will also be the most relevant worldwide. That's why we're showing it to you today. And beautiful landscape together with this car today on Crete in Greece. Very beautiful place. You can already see the sea in the background. And a lot of wind today here, but of course we will bring you calm elements and of course really windy, crazy ones. The front looks a little slimmer than before, a little bit more streamlined, bigger air intakes, so overall also a little sportier. LED headlights from standard equipment. Then optional, as you see here, the Matrix LED, which also have the high beam, which then can leave out certain spots, not to blind, the traffic that is facing you. Overall, from the exterior, surely more an evolution than a revolution. If you look at the previous generation, side to side, you don't see so many differences. They really tried to make subtle changes because the vehicle is already working pretty well. So you also not try to, screw off existing customers. Of course, I would like to hear your opinion if they should have been more daring or if you think that the small design changes they've made that they also please you. 4.92 or 16'1" is a total length now. That is about 6.3 centimeters longer than the predecessor version. So you gain some more room, especially in the rear for the rear passengers, and 100 liters more boot space. You will soon see that too. Rims 19, 20 or 21 inch. Those ones here are the optional 21 inch, and they don't look too big on that huge SUV. Actually, we will soon show you also 20-inch rim, that they appear smaller even, of course, and look really, really small on the vehicle. You can get the wheel arches also with plastic fenders. We'll soon show you that also on a different white vehicle. Here they are painted in vehicle color. Again, Vizcaya Blue is the color right there. Only the lower part here is then from the black plastic. Other than that, it's, not too much playing around with the design. Round shades right here. There's no distinct design line, and also upright windows. Here the strong Porsche shoulders, as we know from a lot of different other vehicles as well. Overall big windows still. I think that's good that you also can look from the outside, from the inside to the outside very well. And classic silver roof rails. Again, state me your opinion about this design. Interesting also that they now put the rear wheels wider than the front wheels. That is a technology carried over from 911 and should bring you more stability, more sportiness while driving. And also new rear axle steering is available, going across in slow speeds and parallel at higher speeds. We will also test this new technology when we drive the car very soon. And by the way, fine dust particles, especially in our cities, they do not only derive from the exhaust tip, but also from use of tires and also the particles that derive from the brake discs. And actually there's here a new coating that is reducing those fine dust particles coming from the brake discs by about 80%. So this is one way we can say, hey, I'm driving a Porsche Cayenne to save the environment, right? I'm reducing fine dust by this new coating. So something good for your conscience. Definitely a very interesting technology, and this should also be overtaking for other vehicles because, of course, it makes sense if we reduce fine dust as much as possible from all different sources where it could come from. So when you look at this rear, you might not think about weight savings, but Porsche engineers did, and at least they could lower the weight approximately 65 kilograms, depends on the engine you pick overall from the vehicle. Visually, it also looks, a little bit more elegant, especially also with this glass line running through. Is also an LED light that is running through then at night. At the moment it's too bright to see it right now. And in the lower part you can see that the exhaust tip, the outer parts are not exactly fake as we see quite often in industry today. They've just, made it from one piece. It kind of widens to the outside part. I think that is also nicely done. And the top part here is an integrated spoiler. There is also an adaptive spoiler available for the higher trims or the higher engine trims that is then also flipping up above 160 kilometers an hour or used as an air brake when you brake down, from 185 kilometers an hour. But then, of course, that is just a feature which plays a role in, basically only in Germany where you can drive so fast and only on the motorways where you're actually allowed to and when you have the chance to. So for most markets, this adaptive spoiler will not really be effective. What do you think about the new rear? And now let's get inside. We can use the key, of course, open, close, and for the hatch, it's a little bit slimmer than before, like in the new Panamera. And getting inside is, of course, also possible with keyless entry. And this vehicle is equipped with the optional soft close like this. You see, you don't have to smash the door. This is the elegant way of closing a door. Then let's get on the inside. A lot of shiny black elements is used here, but you can also replace them. Those ones are prone to fingerprints and scratches, so I would probably go for another option. Then there's plenty of space on the inside of the door. Overall, the whole door is pretty upright. You have memory seat function right there. Then a nice Cayenne entry cap right there. And then let's talk about the seats. You get two forms, the normal comfort seat, and this one here is the optional adaptive sport seats. You can see it here, has a stronger shoulder part, so you have more side support, and also you can control those bolsters, make them tighter, make them a little bit more loose, like here with those buttons, so you can control everything. If you're more a sporty rider, I would recommend those, but in general, if you seek more comfort, I would recommend the base seats. Usually I have more, a better experience with the base seats because the sportier seats, well, they look better, they are a little bit sportier than in fast riding, but usually the base seats offer more comfort. Unfortunately, most of the times animal skin is used and the inside parts, outside is in base leatherette, but inside is still animal skin. We have to wait for the GTS models, I guess, or you have to go to Porsche exclusive to this program and then say, I want, high-class fabric, I want the high-class leatherette. Then you can also get the animal skin replacement, but just on request. That is missing still with the bigger Porsche models. Seating position, as you know from a large SUV, is very upright. You have good view to all of the sides. This one is still really a very big SUV feeling. You sit even high in the lowest position. We have a panoramic roof here, therefore the headroom is a little bit limited. I'm 1.86 m or 6'1". If you haven't subscribed to Autogefühl yet, it will be a little bit more without the panoramic roof, but we have it in we have it in here, and we have a lot of wind. That's Autogefühl live on tape. We have a lot of wind here today, so you see, this was not the soft close, this was the hard close actually. And so Jonas is now filming and blocking the door at the same time. This is really enthusiasm by our cameraman. Steering wheel can be electronically controlled, takes a while, but you can control it in all of the ways. Then we have turning indicator. Below that is the ACC, and here on the new steering wheel we have this new drive selector. I will explain that one when we drive the car. You also have this boost button, then for sport response for a short time you can get power boost. I usually don't use it. If you're in the Sport Plus mode, then you can even use the launch control, which we will show you, the launch control at the very beginning of our driving part. This one really, really amazing, which this base petrol engine is actually already capable of. Interior overview, it has the style again, as every Porsche has from the outside, that everything is really wrapped tight, especially here with those horizontal lines, you can see it. This vehicle is equipped with the Sports Chrono package, which automatically comes with the S model, but optional for the base model. Then you also get the analog clock, for example. Then the sporty steering wheel, again from your side now. Soon more details to the instruments as well. They are not all analog anymore, so the only analog one is in the middle part, sides are digital. You got the new 12.3-inch screen. This one here, really impressive, also well integrated, and it responds really fastly. You can see it here, zooming in like on a smartphone for the map. The GPS does a very good job. And then you have different options here, like connecting your phone with Bluetooth, or it's also possible to use the smartphone connectivity, my trans music right here. Here in this case the Apple CarPlay works pretty closely. As for climate, you can actually do it right here in the system. A lot of different options, for example where the vents are coming from. This one you have to do in the screen. I'm not so fond of that. But the rest you can still control in the lower part, and you can have some different, car views right here. For the air suspension, with this optional air suspension this vehicle is equipped, you can also change the riding height there, for example. So that's about the infotainment system. Then, if we go a little bit lower, this is the new middle console. It's really like in the Panamera, and the volume button, you cannot see it that well from your perspective, is right behind the 8-speed converter gearbox. It's a new one, shifting a little bit smoother than before. Then you have those hotkeys here. They give you a little haptic feedback. They click a little bit also. Click, click, click. But the scrunching is, for example, usually I want to reach the nav, the GPS hotkey, and then I have to, from a driver's perspective, like, there. I'm not sure. So I would have put the GPS hotkey right here, actually next to the driver, next to climate, for example. Then what I find quite neat, those metal knurled temperature buttons right here. You can change the temperature still, and the vent power. That one you can still do right here. It's an easy solution. Below that then, if you have it, seat heating and also seat cooling, and it works at the same time. So if you are getting in a rain shower, maybe in winter times, maybe also here on camera now it's working, the seat ventilation, you can dry and warm yourself at the same time. That's good. And below that, when we go to the sports mode, it automatically changes also the suspension, but you can also do it just on your own. Click the suspension here, make it stiffer due to the new air chamber system. I will explain that one also when we drive the vehicle. Electric handbrake, then a small smokers package in here, and below that, adaptive beverage holders. Well done, also fits for bigger bottles. And then the armrest, I'm not sure if we can already get that on camera now. otherwise we have to switch around. 2 USB ports, see both iPhones mounted at the moment. Don't you like my cork cover? It's nice, right? So, and then you can also connect it via Apple CarPlay right here, for example. So actually everything is rather clean, less buttons than before. This upper part is also very interesting. You can have, for example, the SOS button here, controllable buttons. You can put favorites on there. This one here is for the shade of the sunroof. So if you want, driving in very hot climate, it takes some time, but slowly it's coming. You may be also hearing that. Here we go. And that's of course very important when you're in rather hot climate. But I think, well, if you're maybe in the Middle East and buy this vehicle, probably you will leave out the panoramic roof completely. And then you can also open it, and it is actually a really large roof. So, well, not exactly convertible feeling totally, but you see it's a very wide opening, and that leaves a lot of light here in the interior. Also, I like that we have a separate button to activate the camera system. So when I click this one, then the camera system and the infotainment system is getting active. It's a very clear resolution. You have the fake drone view from above. You can also change the perspective here, for example, to a more wide angle view or to the side view. This is right and left next to the tires, that you can check that you do not damage those precious 21-inch alloys. Well, sometimes people also ask me against practical reasons against leather, and you can see here, this is a new vehicle and already it's getting those waves inside. And you also see those white dust particles. It's because of the ventilation, the perforated structure. A lot of stuff gets stuck in there. Then some people clean them one by one, with those sticks you clean your teeth with. So instruments, the analog part, big RPM meter is in the middle, classic Porsche. But left and right are screens. Left also for the digital speed, and the right one would be the one you rather control. Here, for example, the driving data. Then see, as soon as I go to the GPS, it switches to both screens at the same time. Also when I'm approaching the next intersection or so. This one would be then the night view assist. Well, at the moment we're facing a wall, and it's daytime, so not really useful now. Lap timer right there, G-force meter, tilting of the car, maybe for off-road use. Then the all-wheel drive distribution, tire pressure, and we will talk about this, using those modes when we drive the vehicle. I will go through them, and then we can also see what's happening then on them. So is soft close also available for the rear doors? Ta-da! Yes, it is. Let's get in the rear compartment. First of all, look in that, same style as in the front, and you always see there's a lot of room in there. The build quality is of course superb, as we expected from Porsche. See this handle here in the lower part? I will talk. Well, there's a little bit loose, isn't it? Strange. Just realized it. But it is actually a very handy handle. Nice alliteration. Let's get inside, because first of all, wow, you sit upright, very comfortable. You can, with this handle, then change the angle of the seats. You can really sit, very upright if you like this. You can or have a leaning back sleeping position, and with this handle you can also completely flip the seat. We'll take a look at how it looks like from the trunk. But the thing is, in my claim, we recently had the Audi A8 in our review, and sitting in an SUV in the rear is more comfortable than in a normal luxury sedan, because you have the upright seating position as you would also probably sit at home. And look at that, wow. I mean, the car is a little bit longer now from the exterior, but they've really gained a lot of knee room. You can easily use this vehicle as a chauffeur vehicle. So extremely comfortable for the rear passengers. With the panoramic roof, I have some more space above my head. So the headroom is okay here, even for tall passengers. Then again, if you are driving with even taller persons, then you should leave out the panoramic roof, then you're a little bit more flexible. The middle tunnel here, all-wheel drive, is actually quite big, but not too high. So you can also sit on the middle part, but it's rather hard. So it's more designed for 2 persons in the rear. Isofix anchors left and right. Then here you can have cup holders, and you can also use this one here as a ski hatch. Immediately turn down and reach through. So quite flexible here actually, and also one of the reasons why this one is among the most popular Porsche vehicles, because it also offers you the most versatility and most room for everything. And let's also take a detailed look then here to the temperature unit. Optional, of course, 4-zone AC, temperature control, even seat heating and seat cooling for the rear seats. Hardly have seen it ever. And in the rear part, also important, all the kids have mobile phones nowadays, so you can USB charge them. And the lower part is again the smoker's package. I'm not sure if I would smoke in such an expensive vehicle, but if you like and you do not annoy anyone else with it, then it's of course your choice. You can also light up your stuff. And last but not least, you can also put the bench here forward, so you have more trunk space if you're not, driving with people in the rear, or maybe you have kids a little bit smaller, that's okay, and then you can have, a little bit less room here, but more room in the trunk. And the wind is actually activating the rear door again. So it's again another point where this vehicle is very flexible. So I make myself a parachute and I can fly away. So let's open the trunk. Right here, electric tailgate. Takes some time, of course. Nice metal cover. This one here I wonder about a little bit. It's not raising up automatically, it's a manual one. But then again, the advantage of a manual one is you can pretty fastly control it. You can also easily remove it right here with this handle. So that's also a nice solution, like this. So, and then we have the full capacity right there. Below that, replacement tire optional available. Here's just the tire repair kit. Then on the left side you have this net, you can store some random stuff. On the right side you can, when you have the air suspension, also lower the vehicle, for example, to load things in easier. Some fixations right there when you use them. And then we go around and flip the seats with those handles. Is this the maximum position? Yeah, it seems like this. And also to the other side. Like this, and then you have really a lot of room available. And of course the other solution would be to still have it upright, but move the bench forward. And you can see you also gain some weight here, or make it a little bit more upright. Here, this is the space you have available. Overall, I think a lot to work with. And then let's also close the hatch. See about the security issue. Safety. Whoa, that's a little bit harsh from the torque, so better watch out, you kids. So let's look under the hood, talk about the engines. Of course, hydraulic struts. Well, everything is covered basically. You cannot see so much, so I have to tell you more. This one here, the new entry petrol engine, replaces the naturally aspirated one. Here, 3-liter V6 1 turbo. Petrol, 340 horsepower with a sports chrono package, 5.9 seconds to 100. Then above that is the 2.9 liter, so a little bit less displacement, also V6, but then with a bi-turbo, the second new V6 petrol. Then 4.9 seconds to 100 because it has not only 340 but 440 horsepower. And then there's also the turbo already available, V8 4-liter, 550 horsepower and 3.9 seconds to 100, so always a second less if you step up. But also price-wise, big differences. Here in German, reference prices, 75,000 entry price for this one here. Then above 90,000, 92,000 for the Cayenne S, and with the 2.9 liter. And for the turbo, 138,000. Wow, and I mean, that doesn't stand in any relation. Entry price in the US, by the way, for the new one, $65,000 US, but in the US, you know, the price are without VAT. And in Germany, we state them with VAT, with Mehrwertsteuer. That's the difference, and why the German price appear higher than the US prices. And later on, there will also be a hybrid. Maybe there, well, I mean, it's expected that we also see different hybrids, for example, V6 and the V8 hybrid. And yes, they also confirmed now there will be again a diesel, not necessarily in the US, but on the other markets where diesel was so far available, they will also reintroduce a diesel model at the later stage. And by the way, here to show you a different color in white, and look at those 20-inch rims. I mean, 20 inches is really huge, but it looks so small on that vehicle. I mean, already the 21-inch rims on our vehicle look not too big, but here was 20-inch, really looks small. Usually I always say go for smaller rims, and you know, they don't damage the tires then that easily. But here I must say that 20-inch looks really small. And also interesting here on this vehicle, here the wheel arches are with black plastic to stress this crossover SUV look. You can also get an off-road package with another front lower bumper to protect the car. I would like to get your opinion. Do you rather like it here with the plastic wheel arches, more SUV look, or do you prefer the more elegant approach where the wheel arches are painted in vehicle color? Nice roar, we start this driving part of the all-new Porsche Cayenne. As I said earlier, I intentionally picked the base petrol engine because this is the petrol engine that you have been buying. Well, you know, the base model. It's a new engine, but the thing was, most people went for the base petrol worldwide, especially our friends in the US. And I think it's always more important to show, you know, what's most relevant for the people really buying the car, for you, and not what, you know, what I think, I want to drive the biggest horsepower variant version. I think it's better to keep it real, because it has, you know, definitely more useful for you. And the biggest difference from the previous engine version to this one here is the pure power. 50 Newton meter more. We've got a lot of room here. There's no one here. What shall we do? Maybe we can hammer the throttle and we can make it Sport Plus and go from 0, because that's 5.9 seconds officially. Let's see what we can score with that. Launch control. That was it. Was it 5.9? We gotta check that in the time code. Maybe if you watch the time code, check it. Maybe Jonas also will add a very fancy time code. He sometimes does that. I love that. Or maybe he has already done when you watch it. Yeah, it was really impressive. And at the same time, due to the all-wheel drive, you have a very even distribution also of the power. So that I can also tell you something about the consumption. I will now reset the consumption meter, because, I mean, acceleration tests is not really something which should count into, the real fuel consumption test. Yeah, I mean, this is really the big difference. So before you had the naturally aspirated V6, now the V6 turbo with 340 horsepower. 40 horsepower more than before and 50 Newton meter of torque more than before. And that does make a massive difference. So the V6 with the naturally aspirated engine, you had to kick it a little bit more, get it rather to some more RPM. This one here is so easily coming from all RPM range. It's so effortless to drive. You know, I'm also a fan of naturally aspirated engines still, somewhat. Most manufacturers do get rid of them. So, you know, that's just a fact. That's the way it is. Again, also the advantage is really that you just have more power, more explosive acceleration especially. This all-wheel drive, how does it work? Well, it has a standard distribution of 40 in the front and 60, adjusting the mirrors, pretty easily done in the electric. So 40 front, 60% in the rear, but it's basically constantly adjusting. And we will show you how. Because here, for example, in the normal instruments, you see then our small camera facing the front. When I'm approaching the next junction, I not only have the big GPS screen right there, because maybe, you know, someone wants to do, co-driver wants to play with it. I also have it right in the instruments, and the whole right screen is then covered with the GPS information, showing me the next junction. And that's really good function, because it's adaptive. You know, you can use it for other information during that, but as soon as the GPS is being approached, there you have it. So stop sign. Even if I just gently push it, I mean, I can already tell you right now, you do not need any more power for this vehicle. If you think about, should I go for a Cayenne S or for the turbo even? I mean, this one has so much power, it's already so sovereign to drive. The only reason why you would need the S or the turbo is if you want to spend more money. That's basically the only reason. Acceleration-wise, yeah, I mean, they still made some differences. It's like with the Sport Chrono package and the launch control, which we've shown you, by the way, Sport Plus mode, hammered brakes, hammered throttle, then the launch control is activated. It's 5.9, 4.9, 3.9 from Cayenne, Cayenne S, and Cayenne Turbo. But with this acceleration, you can, I mean, it's not a race car. It's not supposed to be a race car, even though the performance figures show that. But the main focus of this vehicle is also a sporty, comfortable ride. So in an SUV, you have this upright seating position, the super sovereign ride. You're on top of the road, you're king of the road. You sit so high, have a good overview to all of the sides. Windows are upright. At the same time, it's not this big SUV feeling where you feel like a but a little stiffer, as you're supposed to have with the Porsche vehicle. So you can have this sporty Porsche riding experience at the very same time. This is, you know, the concept behind the Cayenne, which has been boosting its sales ever since. And maybe you know, or let me tell you just right now, meanwhile Porsche worldwide sale 2/3 SUV, so Cayenne and Macan, and 1/3 of pure sports cars. So if you say Porsche is an SUV brand rather than a sports car brand, you're right. That's how you could describe it. Of course, this one here is still following the sports car DNA. This is what makes this car special, and indeed, handling-wise and from the sovereignty of power and stuff. By the way, I'm driving, you know, as I'm supposed to, 90 kilometers an hour when locals overtake us. I will always drive according speed because my driving license is actually very crucial for my job, if you can understand that. Now we can also test the cruise control. So it's the Porsche one always works a little bit different than the other ones. There it is, ACC got included here. So That's it. And it's also keeping the distance to the cars in front of me. The automatic emergency brake is from standard equipment. We do expect that by a car from this price range. Also with a pedestrian recognition. Then you can optionally get so many more assistance systems. That's also something which is we're awaiting here for this very car. So that's also been a level stepped up from the previous generation. More assistance systems, definitely. By the way, normal mode, you see how precise the steering wheel reacts to my command. It's a direct translation from the steering to the road, and that's so much fun. And here on Crete, where we are today, you hardly have straight roads, which is good for car driving. And sometimes when you have huge SUVs, then it's not so much fun to really drive winding roads. But here with the Cayenne, it still is, and that's what this car is basically all about. By the way, they have also worked on the turning indicator, same with the Panamera. It's still a little bit when you not only, like when you tip it, it's like just for 3 indications, but when you want to make it longer like this, I think the resistance here in the turning indicator is still somewhat weird. It is a little bit better than before, but still I don't really understand why, this is one thing you can really find with those Porsche vehicles, which is a little bit weird. So many things are so perfect and sporty and great and smooth and from sound and haptics, but the turning indicator, they don't really quite get it. So most of the times when I drive a Porsche, I don't, really push the turning indicator all the way. I just use the click function because I don't want to have this strange resistance they built in there. I don't know really why. So let's talk about those gauges in the front, because not only water and oil temperature they show us, they can also show us, for example, the consumption. We'll talk about that later when we're driven a little bit further. And even a night view. It's starting to get a little bit darker here now, and this is pretty impressive. I'm not really sure if I would really use it. I mean, you do have this night vision then here. You can also see it on camera. Pretty fancy feature, optional of course. I mean, I would always say it's just better to watch the road. Or what do you see? Do you have any experience with night vision? If someone has it in the vehicle, would be looking forward to that. You can start the stopwatch. You have the G-force meter. You see the applied G-forces like in a 911. The PDCC, the Porsche Dynamic Chassis Control, also shows the angle of the, how the vehicle is leaning. And then my favorite feature in the front of the instruments are those all-wheel drive distribution figures. So there we can see, for example, that when I'm driving rather, let's say, slowly, more torque is distributed to the rear. So just a little to the front, I would say, like at the moment 10%, 15%, something, and really the most to the rear axle to ensure this sporty ride. And this is, of course, again, another key element for a Porsche vehicle. But what about this rear axle here today? Because, first of all, we got the air suspension built in. It has a 3-chamber air suspension now. Before it was 2, and also the air volume was increased. So Porsche can play more with the wide span between a soft suspension and a stiffer sport suspension. So in a normal mode, it's a very comfortable ride, but you already feel that it has a sporty setup, that's for sure. So what do you not have is this super soft air suspension ride, which you sometimes have in some Mercedes models, for example. You say, you really like riding a carpet, like wow, which is a great comfortable feeling, but you do not expect that when you want a little sportier ride. So the base setup is like the air suspension setup from a, let's say, Mercedes E43, for example, where you have a AMG tuned air suspension. That's what you get from the base setup for this Porsche here, because it's combined to the brand. And then we also have in this vehicle the rear axle steering. So when we drive slow, then it goes across basically, so in the opposite direction of the front wheels. When we drive, what is this? Come on. Yes. What do you say here in Greece? So kudos to all our Greek viewers here today. Such a beautiful country with so beautiful islands. So, Evcharisto for having us here. Wow, that was some Greek language course, wasn't it? So, let's go a little bit faster now. I'm more dynamic. Check out the rear axle steering. And the thing is, you know, with a car that is this long, and has this long wheelbase, it really makes sense. We also felt it with the Audi A8. And that gives you even more agility. So it is a coast-intensive feature. If you are seeking something to make the car, first of all, lowering the turning circle in your everyday driving life, and at the same time making it more agile, then this is definitely a very good option. And it is surely the very good test track here also for a new Porsche Cayenne. This one, by the way, here the normal mode, when it can take some time when the car to shift down. So if you want to improve that, you can also go to the driving mode selector at the steering wheel, go to the sport mode. And now, maybe also heard that, the car is automatically shifting down. So it's shifting down faster and shifting up later. And then where, for example, here now in the corner, we can get faster out. Also the air suspension is a little stiffened up then, and by this new air suspension, by the revised one, and the new rear axle steering and the increased power of the new V6 engine, two new V6 engine actually, the Cayenne S2, you can make this large SUV feel smaller. That's what, you know, what the intention was, letting it feel more agile. I remember the last time I was driving a Cayenne GTS in the previous generation, which was also, you know, a very fine-tuned vehicle. Also very agile considering its size. Here now again, they've stepped up the game even a little. Is the difference that much that you would say, I have to sell my current Cayenne immediately and change to the new one? No, I wouldn't say so, because the previous generation is already a great, big, sporty SUV. You feel there's notable difference in all the improvements they've made here, but again, I see no hurry to say, let's put my previous Cayenne to the dumpster. You know, when you want to change at some time anyway, I think you will not be disappointed, as all of the different disciplines have been, have made a little bit better even. You can also go to the Sport Plus mode. Then the suspension is even a little bit stiffer. We feel that it's getting a little bit bumpier now. At the same time, have more control over the vehicle, even a little bit stiffer in corners. It's not what you would do to increase the very comfort of the car, but here in those winding roads, which are perfect to have also an entertaining view for you, that is then again a great choice. So let's enjoy that here together. You have seen Sport Chrome package in here. That's the reason we could also make the faster acceleration. Wow, how smooth the car is driving, although it is, relatively high with the SUV, heavy as well. They have saved across the lineup about 65 kilograms of weight. So, I mean, that's driving like with one person less or more in the car. So it's not too much they've saved in weight, but a little bit, and this will hopefully help. So, what else can we see? In the front here, tire pressure as well. But then if we talk about consumption and driving sporty, and you remember, I did reset the trip meter after we've done the launch control. And since then, I mean, those are winding roads, and I'm being, not steady speed. So this is bringing the consumption up for sure. However, the consumption is about, at the moment, over 15 liters on 100 kilometers. And I think that cannot exactly be, excused just by those winding roads. You have to take into consideration turbo is working, and it is still a big, heavy vehicle with a lot of wind resistance, with a lot of weight that has to be moved, and so on. If you're driving this vehicle, cruise control, straight line, highway, sitting at whatever, to 50 miles an hour or something, and of course you can score low consumptions. So I've, when I took the car, it was like this situation before, and then you can have some, 10, 11 liters if you like so. But you have to work for that, basically. So this one is something that is rather inevitable, that the consumption is too high. I could have told you before, actually. Oh, great, motocross bike, nice guy. You have this sovereign great ride, you have the abundance of power. I mean, what can you say? It's hard to combine this then with a low consumption. That's just, let's say, problems of physics. What we can do actually also is, maybe find some more spots to drive it more economically, which is not that easy here on Crete, on those winding roads. But then I can also tell you maybe when I achieved some lower consumption. So, that about consumption. It's getting a little bit darker here now, but still a good view to the front screen. Also panoramic views to the sides. So it's also a good vehicle to watch the landscape, that's for sure. And let's go back to the Sport Plus mode once more. And I give you some minutes now, also just to listen a little bit to the motor sound, to the winding roads in front of us. Now also with the LED headlights, that you can just enjoy some pure driving with me together and the older generation of the Cayenne. Let's go. If you heard that squeaking, by the way, is from a trunk, just some luggage. Nothing squeaking in this vehicle. So driving through a village, very nice. When we get out, I'll hammer it once more. Here, of course, we are careful. Sound insulation, by the way, is superb. You basically hear nothing from the outside. And the engine is also not too loud. It's also pretty well insulated, of course. And you can also use the shifting pedals if you like. So if you, for example, prefer a more comfortable ride in normal driving mode, which is more relieving, and then say, I want to start an overtaking process, I want to ride a little bit faster, then shift down once or twice, and then control it on your own. Plop. It's also very well to use those pedals. So, some more nice corners for you. Wow, what a stability this vehicle giving us. And the roads are not that good. So we do have some bumps in here and it's shaking us a little bit. But again, the air suspension is evening it out very, very well. Brakes, Shifting down myself. Straight. Very windy outside, but still very silent in here. It's always nice to see this corner sign that an S road is coming ahead. So, back to second gear, we can accelerate out. Bam. So, what else do you want to know from driving the all-new Porsche Cayenne? I think we gave you a lot of insight and also all the new technology information. This is still, I think, benchmark as for the big SUV, as for the sporty riding. And now to our off-road driving part, and there is a special off-road button. You can also access it with the main menu, but there as a shortcut. And then we can pick different modes: gravel, mud, sand, and rocks. So this changes how the electronics from distribution, from torque, rear to front work, also differentials and so on. Everything electronic nowadays. And you can also change the chassis height. So we can really put it higher, for example, high, and also terrain. Here, well, it's a gravel road now, high. Maybe you've seen it also on camera. The car is pumping itself up, y'all. Really funny, of course. Then we can, let's say, what is it? I would say it's gravel, right? So then off-road mode for gravel active. And let's go. It's of course good to have even more ground clearance than with the air suspension. So if you're going off-road, the air suspension is really the most important feature for your comfort. And of course also that the car does not get any damage. And well, those are some gravel roads here right now. So beautiful, definitely also landscape-wise. They are great off-road tracks on Crete. Before anyone says no, that's not real off-road. Yeah, it is a gravel road. So there are of course harder off-road tracks. However, I don't think that when you buy a Porsche Cayenne that you would typically go the hardest off-road trails with it. Or what do you think? So, I mean, it's of course rather noisy now from the gravel, but still the car shows very comfortable driving still, considering the underground. And that's again due to the air suspension. Oh, there's a road blockade by another Porsche Cayenne. But they'll surely make some room for us. They're also filming here, colleagues. And we can carry on further. Wow, what a scenic road here. Amazing, really amazing. And for this type of stuff, the Cayenne is still really suitable. However, I have to say, if you have an air suspension that is not set on a sporty ride, but more on a very comfortable ride, thinking about, let's say, a Mercedes GLE, for example, it is more comfortable. So you always feel that here in the Cayenne, you have the sporty setup also from the air suspension. And so they are more comfortable off-road cars, they are more capable off-road cars. But on the road, in the agile performance, there's hardly anything that can really beat the Cayenne. So that's where the focus definitely is. From the overdrive distribution, we can also check that one out. Let's see here in the gauges, it's always great. So in the off-road mode here, for example, we have a more even distribution front and rear, like 50-50. That is what the off-road mode is changing. That's of course important when you're having some uphills and also with gravel and stuff, that you can easier get up without any wheel spin. Also when I push the throttle here a little bit more now, I can see the all-wheel distribution remains the same. So this is, you know, the off-road setup you get then. And if I would have the standard street setup here, for example, I would have had more wheel spin than at the rear wheels, for example. Of course, then again, nowadays the modern cars, they adapt that well to the situations, also with the modern all-wheel drives, that theoretically you can just leave any off-road modes and just drive the normal mode, and most of the obstacles will be handled anyway. This is just here to optimize it a little more, and when the off-road part is a little bit harsher. So the Cayenne can also be used for gravel, rocks and mud to some extent, and is still fun, but definitely you can feel it. It's rather home on the road for sure. Well, from the exterior it looks sleeker than before, a little bit more elegant, even a little sportier. Then from the interior you have a cleaned up interior with less buttons, more infotainment. Looks all quite fancy, and we know when you have some experience you can also even better control this infotainment system. You get used to it actually quite fast. What is missing are of course more sustainable seating materials. We have to wait for the GTS models there or use the Porsche exclusive manufacturing. A lot of room on the interior, especially even a good chauffeur car. That is also something which is remarkable, not often said in SUV car reviews. And for sure, still the Porsche with, you know, the most flexibility, versatility, room on the interior. There's also now the Panamera Sport Turismo, which is also really handy if you have a family. But this one, of course, you know, gives you a lot what you can actually choose from when you want to, you know, get some luggage or family inside. And driving experience, well, still sets the benchmark in the big SUV segment. This one here has so much agility already in the base model version. Then your rear axle steering, fine adjustment of the optional air suspension. That one gives you more agility and comfort at the very same time. The base setup remains really very sporty, and that's what Porsche customers also do expect from this vehicle. Consumption-wise, it should be lower, and well, we tried really to get it a little bit lower, but you're always way in the two-digit figures. Of course, it's a big vehicle, can hardly do anything about it, but when you soon can get the hybrid, this one then will be a possibility to get this consumption down, as we saw already in the Panamera. It works also when you not only refilling it all the time, even just when it's running and recuperating while driving, it already makes sense then to go for the hybrid. Maybe also to replace the diesel at some point, because diesel sales will surely drop a little bit for this vehicle. Germany will still be a major diesel market still, but I think more and more people will also then go for the hybrid later. In general, the base petrol engine is so powerful. You've seen the launch control. Yes, you can have a little bit better acceleration even with the, you know, with a more horsepower engine than also with a turbo. But then again, if you look at the price, the base model is of course also the best offer. This one here with a lot of extras here today, because they never give us any base models which are really pure base. But then again, with the base engine, you can keep the price at the lowest. It's already an expensive vehicle, and it's not really worth to go for a turbo, just if you say, you know, I don't care about the money at all. And now to the extensive conclusion of this SUV comparison. Design-wise, a verdict is always a matter of taste. However, we can say that Audi took the most progressive approach with the design of their Q8. They also show the most angular design, whereas the Porsche Cayenne has the most consistent design over the generations, still with predominantly round shapes. The BMW X5 and the Mercedes GLE look stronger than before. That's the evolutionary change. So which one turns most heads? Definitely the Audi Q8. But which one is the most beautiful one? That's up to you. Thomas's personal favorite in exterior styling? Yeah, I really like the extraordinary approach of the Q8 and would take that design as a first impulse. But when I think long term, I think the BMW X5 could be a more timeless choice, so that could be my pick. As for the interior, the build quality is top-notch with all those cars, whereas BMW especially stepped up the game in comparison to the predecessor. You could argue that they are starting to get ahead of Audi and Porsche even. The Mercedes maybe lags behind slightly there, but everything on a high level. Infotainment-wise, Mercedes and BMW offer the best voice recognition system. Audi and Porsche set all sails on touchscreen, whereas BMW and Mercedes also offer a drive controller, a better redundant solution for controlling the infotainment system while driving. The software of the Cayenne and the GLE is more complicated. The software of the Q8 and the X5 offers a better overview and navigation through menus. As for comfort in seating, the Porsche Cayenne has a disadvantage because of the stiff bolstering. The Mercedes GLE and the BMW X5 are both very comfortable. As for the Audi Q8, you should consider the proper seat form. Take the comfort seat if you want to have it cozy and not the sports seat. As for harm to animals and the environment, Porsche widely ignores this issue for the seating materials. Audi offers a fabric-based trim in some markets, BMW offers SensorTech leather red in all markets, and Mercedes leads the way with different colors of Artico or MBTEX, as well as Dynamica microfiber in the AMG line. Driving-wise, the Porsche Cayenne feels like the sportiest. That's also what they strive for. The suspension is the stiffest of all four. The air suspension of the BMW X5 is also relatively stiff for a big SUV. However, the X5 shows a very natural driving feeling. The Audi Q8 has the best compromise in driving. It's the best to combine comfort and sportiness. The Mercedes GLE is set on a classic carpet-like air suspension ride, which is a good decision, we think. Furthermore, the Mercedes GLE comes with that new e-active body control system, where the car can lean into the corner to reduce the felt G-forces applied on the passengers. Very interesting technology highlight, however in our test rides we found it exciting, but not necessarily a must-have option. However, if you take the normal air suspension, the Mercedes GLE offers the softest ride. Again, we found the best overall driving experience with the Audi Q8, since all demands are met. The most economical engine, by the way, is the 3-liter diesel for the BMW X5. X5, GLE and Cayenne also come as plug-in hybrids. Porsche won't offer any diesel anymore. With the Porsche plug-in hybrid as a V6, we had so far also quite a good impression, and it is a very interesting ride to have this both engine technologies in one car. So you can recuperate very well, and you can also have pure electric driving over a certain amount of time. So for everyone who is searching an alternative to a diesel and is also, quite keen on new technology, the Cayenne PHEV is also very interesting. So now, where does it leave us? That's a really tough pick for today. All four master certain disciplines the best. The Porsche comes with the sleek design of a put-up 911 and the very sporty handling and abundance of power. However, it's also the least comfortable one in this test, never comes without animal skin. New in the Porsche Cayenne Coupe is that you have a new fabric seating choice, which indeed makes the seating experience softer, so that then changes the ride indeed. But it's not available in the SUV yet. A very interesting choice is the plug-in hybrid that scores decent fuel consumption even if you don't plug in recharge frequently. The Mercedes GLE offers the most comfortable suspension and special technology highlights as the e-active body control and the MBUX infotainment system. The GLE offers the best choices for seating materials. It is, however, the least sporty model in the test. The Audi Q8 shows the best compromise between sportiness and comfort. The driving is just flawless. As for the interior, the comfort is heavily influenced by the seating form, where it goes from quite good to most excellent. Especially in high trims, Audi uses a lot of animals in the car. The infotainment system is easy to learn, but touchscreen only. The BMW X5 has the most natural driving feeling. The setup, however, is quite stiff for an air suspension. By the way, we tested all four cars with the air suspension, which is optional in most cases. One flaw of the X5 is that it has limited legroom in the rear for a car of that size. Voice input is very good, the material quality is great, and they do offer Sensatec as entry trim. The 6-cylinder is a good pick, and the most fuel-saving one would be a 3-liter diesel. So please give me the X5 styling on the outside, the Audi comfort seats with the Mercedes seating materials, the handling of the Q8 or the Cayenne, and the character of the X5 V6 petrol or their 3-liter diesel. Or then again, yeah, the Cayenne PHEV was also very interesting, looking forward to drive the X5 as PHEV too. So, my personal pick clearly shows that the Q8 and the X5 would be my favorites. Head says Q8, heart says probably the X5. What about you?